Due to COVID-19, Committee of Adjustment public hearings are being conducted virtually by electronic means through WebEx Webinar, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. Participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, which is moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may watch on YouTube. My name is Bruce Mullock, and the panel members this morning are Aaron Cheng, Peter Reed, and Carl Nipfel. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting via computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone. They have the option of participating via video or audio only. All participants will automatically be muted upon entry. When an item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time, and we ask that you also mute your devices until you are called upon to speak. Those participating by video appearance will be temporarily upgraded to panelist status when their item is being heard. As panelist, your camera will be enabled. You will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time. At all other times, your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written deadline submission date. Members of the public and applicants are not allowed to use share screen or any other panelist controls during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role should you fail to respect this instruction. I will now proceed with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that apply to property, permission to extend or to alter lawful non-conforming uses, and finally, consents to sever property in order to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address, because the Committee of Adjustment and the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email only. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee, you may be able to appeal the decision to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or in some limited circumstances, to the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, the provincial government recently amended the Planning Act and generally removed the rights of third parties to appeal Committee of Adjustment decisions. As of November 28, 2022, only the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act are permitted to appeal decisions of the Committee of Adjustment. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision. I will call each item in the order that it is listed on the agenda. Where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if requested to do so by the committee. When the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair, should they wish, to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. And I will comment to you as your 5-minute mark approaches. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address. And please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed first and may be asked to make a presentation. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide instead to defer the application if substantially revised, to ensure the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice are informed of the changes. Then individuals either in support of or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished presentations. When all speakers are finished, the applicant or agent has an opportunity to rebut, but only to those issues which were raised by the speakers. And that'll mark the end of discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, have the minutes of the last hearing been confirmed by members?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and panel members. No, there are no minutes to confirm today.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest by panel or staff for items in this slot? Mr. Nipfel, go ahead. Which number is it? Mr. Nipfel, you are muted.
That makes it hard to hear me, doesn't it? Number 6, one of the objectors is a professional colleague of mine.
Okay, so you'll be recusing on number 6.
Yes, I will.
Thank you for that. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, have you received any requests for deferral?
Through the chair, no, there are requests for deferral this morning. There is one request for item number 18, 515 Pape Avenue.
Number 18, 515 Pape, deferral request. Thank you. Okay. And are there any files to be closed?
No, there are no files to be closed.
Thank you very much. With that, we move along to this morning's agenda, beginning with number 1, 208 Glebe Mount Avenue. And on this application, the panel has before it the material submitted at the time of application, survey, site plan, floor plans, elevations. There is a set of revised site plans received 4th of April, 8 photographs of trees, cover letter from the agent, April 4. There is a zoning waiver from the agent, April 5th. Correspondence agent, February 3, and an arborist report, February 10. And there is commenting report from community planning and also a staff report from urban forestry. So moderator, let's have the Agent, on number 1, join us, please.
Stepan, you've been unmuted. Hi, Stepan. You've been unmuted.
Hear me?
Good morning.
Stepan, can you hear us? Are you there? Through you, Mr. Chair, the agent appears to have some technical issues.
Shall we go to number 2 and return to number 1? Moderator, let's set number 1 aside and come back to it. And hopefully we can raise the agent. So we'll carry on to item number 2, 73 Deucen Street. Here the panel has before it those submitted materials with the application. There are 5 photographs of trees from October. There's a cover letter from the agent, April the 18th, and there is correspondence in opposition from number 80 Deucen Street, Valerie Azinwana. Okay. Agent, join us please by stating your name.
Graham Barrett, SGL Planning and Design, 1547 Bloor Street West, agent with the owners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, and just confirming with you, moderator, we do have one person standing by in opposition, correct? Okay. Okay, Mr. Barrett, you have 5 minutes to present your proposal to the panel. Go ahead, please.
Gladly, thank you. This is a proposal to add a 4th dwelling unit to the subject property. 3 are previously existing and are currently being renovated. All work being done is permitted at the moment. It's all interior alterations and other improvements, which didn't require any variances from the zoning bylaw. The 4th unit is planned for the basement, and a new front basement walkout is proposed. The walkout is permitted as of right. There are no other changes proposed to the dwelling. Now, only one variance is triggered, and that's related to the total interior floor area of the secondary suites, which will be 74% of the interior floor area of the dwelling unit within which they are located. I find this provision a little odd, but in this case, and I've confirmed with zoning, the ground floor unit is considered the primary dwelling unit. The basement, 2nd floor, and 3rd floor units are considered secondary suites. The total interior floor area, not the GFA, of the house is 262.55 square meters, and that includes the basement unit, unlike a GFA calculation. So the 3 secondary suites total 194.63 square meters of interior floor space, which is 74% of the total. The maximum is 118.14 square meters. This property has actually been before the Committee of Adjustment before. I found it a little odd that the previous decision wasn't posted on the AIC as they usually are, but this was back on October 28th of 1981. I do have a copy of the decision. At the time, an application for permission to, and I quote, convert premises number 73 Deucen Street from a lodging house to a 3-family dwelling house without the necessity of providing garage facilities as required by the zoning bylaw, end quote. A 1-story rear addition was also permitted, and the GFA max was exceeded by 63.2 square meters or 680 square feet. At the time, the committee acknowledged that the property is landlocked and there is no room for parking on the site. Currently, no parking is required, nor would it be possible to provide any. The rear yard's landlocked, the front yard is quite small. The subject site is well served by transit and cycling routes. The introduction of a 4th dwelling unit will have no impacts beyond the past impact of 3 dwelling units. It may just be that this particular minor variance application would be permitted as of right in the near future, as this dwelling could be considered a fourplex rather than a dwelling unit with 3 secondary suites. And the Planning and Housing Committee has been engaged in a study for the past few years about permitting multiplex housing in all areas designated neighborhoods in the official plan. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, there is a public meeting on the subject tomorrow. And the staff report notes that the recommended official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment present council with the choice to adopt a more equitable and sustainable approach to growth across Toronto that sees neighborhoods adopting to incremental change, remaining vibrant, while preserving the essential built form and scale to allow more Torontonians the option to enjoy our low-rise communities. This is a very nice quote from the staff report. Essentially, there are no changes to the built form of this dwelling beyond a basement walkout in the front, which is permitted as of right. These will be good-sized units that will be ideal for young families. A few of them are 2 bedrooms. This is also quite close to University of Toronto and George Brown College for students potentially. Really, this meets the intent of the zoning bylaw and the official plan. It's appropriate for the development of the site, and that's really all I have to say. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's see if the panel have questions now. Panel questions at this stage? Hearing none. Let's go on and have the registered speaker join us now, please, by stating your name.
Benjamin, you've been unmuted.
Hello,
Good morning.
can you hear me?
Yes. We hear you clearly, please.
May I start?
We hear you clearly, please.
No questions to ask at the beginning, right? Okay. My wife and I'm Dr. Benjamin David Lewinsky. My wife is Alice Lewinsky, are expressing ourselves verbally now on the basis of a letter that we've already written to the Committee of Adjustment. In order to challenge and oppose the application for a so-called minor alteration of the existing 3-story semi-detached dwelling at 73 Deucen Street, resulting in a much enlarged interior floor area of secondary suites, and therefore leading to a number of adverse consequences for us, the residents and owners of the immediately neighboring and adjoining semi-detached property at 71 Deucen Street, Toronto, Ontario. We have lived in Toronto for almost half a century and have moreover lived in this house and property neighborhood for more than 42 years. In writing this letter and declaring our sentiments and points of view, we wish to emphasize just how discrepant with and divergent from anything resembling a minor variance this project of renovation actually is, and how it conflicts with neighborhood and community interests and imperatives that relate to structural and population density, extremely tight, if not non-existent parking spaces to which this project inevitably contributes, and the construction of amenities like a patio which will pave over whatever is still natural or green in the front yard, and a new front basement entrance which will create yet another opening for people to enter and exit this structure. To be built close to our property and thereby becoming blatantly conspicuous sources of obstruction and noise. Where once there were flowers, green foliage, and shrubbery, and a beautiful tree, little, if anything, natural or green will remain. In this particular case, and indeed application, the interior floor area of all the secondary suites will constitute 74% of the total floor area of the secondary suites, going over the legal limit by a figure of almost 30, and thus reflecting a disproportionate increase in the amount of space allocated to these units. This will result not only in a disproportionate increase in the number of tenants or residents occupying these rental units, and therefore a sharp rise in population density in the semi-detached dwelling itself, but also in a much greater noise factor on a daily basis and only growing exponentially worse as the population of residents increases. How much time do I have left?
You
Would
have
you
2
mind
minutes.
telling me?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. into its second year now. The renovation continues unabated with no sense that it might be coming to an end, despite the fact that we and other neighbors have complained about it demonstrably and repeatedly. In fact, the noise has been so unacceptably loud recently that when I asked the employee from 311, as well as the employee affiliated with the Committee of Adjustment, about whether they heard the noise on the telephone, they expressed shock and distress at the decibel level and the disruption that this was causing. What more is the city willing to tolerate and willing to have us and other residents tolerate in the name of development, renovation, and modernization when so many of us are suffering consequences that your own colleagues find intolerable? At the same time, as the patio will be built very close to our house, bordering on our property line, we anticipate a whole host of problems that will result from allowing these plants to take shape, such as late-night parties, smoking cigarettes and other weeds, consuming large amounts of alcohol, making lots of noise. Parking may become unmanageable, if not impossible, due to the combination of what is already a huge problem and the addition of many more people in their cars and parking needs. By the looks of it, the dwelling next door may well be housing luxury apartments with rents becoming exorbitant and certainly unaffordable for people with lower incomes. In the few minutes or the seconds left, I'd just like to turn over to my wife a few considerations related to the human impact on people who have already lived here but are no longer here due to these circumstances.
You just have a few seconds left. I only have 12 seconds left.
Yeah,
Hello.
you don't hear her?
I'm afraid your time is
Pardon
up
me?
in any case.
Major time is up. Did you hear her?
We did not hear her, I'm afraid, no.
Oh, Alice, you weren't heard at all. Okay. I'm sorry about that, but you know, this technology is elusive and very difficult to pin down.
Yes, it can be.
So if you haven't had, if people haven't had the experience of, yeah, okay. So I just thought I would.
I have, okay, your time is officially up, but I do have a question for you. And you've made a couple of references to noise. I want to inquire, are you referring to, I couldn't tell whether you were referring, and we're talking about actual noise experience. Is that noise construction noise? Or is it party noise?
Yeah, it's construction noise next door. It's been going on for a long time. We're into the second year now, and it's really totally unreasonable. Totally unreasonable, and I've questioned it, challenged it, talked to neighbors about it. The neighbors have complained as well. I mean, there's no end in sight to this, and
Okay.
I find it repulsive that there's nobody who even theoretically has taken our side in terms of understanding where we come from. We always understand where the developer comes from in this city now and in this province, but we don't understand anymore where the average regular citizen comes from, and that is, I think, a tremendous
Okay, we're getting off
tragic
topic here.
commentary on what's happened to Toronto.
Thank you very much. Okay, panel members, any other questions for this speaker? Let us then go back to the applicant, who will have an opportunity to speak, comment in rebuttal, but only on those issues raised by the speaker. Applicant?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do sympathize with the adjacent neighbors' concerns, and I know it can be challenging living next door to a home that's being renovated, and I know that it can take time, but that's an inescapable fact of life in a densely populated city. Construction happens, and it's noisy. I personally spent a year and a half living across the street from a hospital as it was gradually being demolished and rebuilt. I didn't get much sleep. But I really can't speak to construction issues because they really aren't a matter for this meeting today.
Well,
Other concerns about
just a moment,
parking.
perhaps. I just want to, is that construction work, is that work that is related to this application, constructing the development in this application, or is it something different? Are we legalizing
Yes,
what
sir,
has already been built? Are you asking us to legalize work that has already taken place?
No, sir. There is interior alterations that are happening in this dwelling at the moment with a building permit. Everything that is being done
Okay,
has
go
a
ahead.
building permit.
Go ahead.
And And on my site visit, this front walkout has not been constructed yet. The basement unit has not been created yet. If this application is approved, then that will be a next phase in the construction process.
Carry on with your
I have, okay, so other concerns about parking, noise from tenants living in their homes, smoking, drinking, and so on. These are really unrelated to the one variance that's before this committee today. I've relayed this letter to our client to make sure the owners of the property are aware of their concerns and aware of the potential construction issues, and I hope that something could be settled as neighbors. Beyond that, there were some issues raised by another neighbor, but most of them have already been covered. Again, it's noise, it's parking issues, it's lack of trees, but none of these have anything to do with the variance before you today. It's really just the one about the floor area of the interior of the dwelling units. So I do sympathize with the neighbor, but beyond that, I believe this minor variance application passes the four tests of the Planning Act.
Thank you very much, panel. Do you have any questions for the speaker? Mr. Nipfel, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you that most of the concerns, which are really quite understandable, are not directly related to this variance application. The one possible exception is the way in which entrance is being provided to the basement. I heard in the gentleman's comments numerous references to the patio and the concern that it's immediately adjacent to their property and it's large and overpowering from their perspective. Is it possible, have you given any consideration to providing a different arrangement for the access to the basement? You could actually not have quite as large a patio to still provide that access to the basement. I realize the access is not an issue relative to the variance today, but I'm interested to know whether there'd be any flexibility in perhaps reducing that below grade patio space.
Well, we are not the designers for this project. I have really offered no design input on this. Patio is below grade. It steps down to it, a little entryway at the front for that basement unit. I mean, I'm not really in a position to offer up different design ideas at this stage for that. And again, there are no variances related to this below grade basement entrance / patio. So I'm not really sure how to answer that, sir.
Any other questions of the applicant panel? Okay, hearing none, we can take this application into committee for discussion, if any, and moving toward a motion. Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the applicant indicated, and I absolutely agree, this is a very minor variance request, and the concerns that the neighbor has brought forward, which are valid, and I appreciate the frustration that he's undergoing, they're not related to the variance that we have before us. The question now is, can they have another suite, a secondary suite? And I don't see any difficulty in that variance being approved. I would like to suggest, not as a condition, but ongoing to the applicant, if there is any possibility to do further consultation on the way in which the basement entrance is provided, I think that would be constructive and might overcome some of the concerns of the adjacent neighbor. Having said that, in terms of the variance, I personally have no difficulty in supporting it and moving approval of it without condition.
Thank you very much. Does that have a second? It is seconded by Mr. Cheng. It is therefore moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor, please show of hands. And that vote is unanimous to carry the motion, and the application is thereby approved. And with that, we return to number 1, and we'll see if we have been able to overcome the technical issue in connecting with that applicant. Moderator, where are we?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the agent notified me that he's fixed the audio issue.
So his issues remain? Okay. Oh, he's cleared them up.
Let's fix them.
Can he join us now? Okay.
Good morning, committee. Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
do hear you clearly. State your name.
Perfect. Good morning. My name is Stefan. I'm the representative of the owners at 208 Glebe Mount Avenue.
Very good. Okay. Panel members, and there is a party moderator standing by in support. Does that person wish to speak?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can double check with the speaker in support.
Stefan, do you know if Natalie wishes to speak?
I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for you to... Well, is she standing by? I think we should let her come on then. So you stand by, Stefan, while we go to Natalie and see what input she would
Sure.
like to make.
Hi, Natalie, you've been unmuted.
Evening. Can you hear me?
We do hear you. State your name.
Hi, good morning. My name is Natalie Spaniel Hodges, and
morning.
I am the neighbor of this proposal. And I was just attending in support. And if you'd like, I can verbally state that support here. We think that this is a great plan and will improve our neighborhood substantially.
Okay. So you do stand in support and...
Yes, and we're at 206 Glebe
And-
Mount,
okay.
right next door.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go back to Stefan. Panel members, any questions for the applicant? Not hearing any. Okay, in that case, we can move to take the application into committee for a motion. Anyone
Through
ready
the-
with a motion?
Through the chair, can we have the applicant confirm if they've changed any of their minor variances since the mail out of their public hearing notice?
Okay, Stefan, important question here. Do you wish to change any of the variances? Here's how they appear right now on the public notice. Do they all stand as they are shown there? Or do you wish to change any of them?
I think they're good. No changes.
So through the chair, there was a revised zoning waiver that was submitted on April 5th, just confirming with the agent that there is no changes.
That's right.
Okay. Panel members, anyone, Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I did have a question. We have in our agenda an email correspondence from the planning department. And it's really old and it basically recommends holding off on this particular application. I'm assuming that those issues that were an issue when this memo was written are no longer an issue. Can the applicant confirm that he's worked out an arrangement with the planning department?
Yes, this project has about a 2-year history with planning department, so we've gone back and forth with them to make sure that they have no objections. We've pretty much reduced the number of the variances, and pretty much at the end complied to their requirements.
And what we have are the reduced variances that you just conferred with the Secretary Treasurer on. Those are the reduced ones that you negotiated through planning.
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Further questions? Anyone ready with a motion? Mr. Reed, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I only had the only variance I had concerns with was in regard to the lot coverage, but looking at the plans, that's mostly going to be located on what was a driveway. So I think it's a material, the material change is minimal. I'm glad to see the changes that the applicant took. I think it results in a better application, and what's being proposed, I think, has very few negative impacts on the neighbors. So I move approval of the application subject to urban forestry condition 2.
Thank you. That is seconded by Mr. Nipfel. Moved and seconded, therefore, to approve, subject to forestry. All in favor, please, show of hands. The vote is unanimous. And the motion is carried. The application is approved. Thanks very much. So we now jump forward to number 3. 22 Oswald Crescent. On this application before us are the application submitted materials. There are 14 photographs of the existing ancillary building and trees. And there is a staff report from Urban Forestry, April 19. Let's have the agent join us, please, by stating your name.
Andrea Shriram. I'm the owner of 22 Oswald Crescent. I have also invited my architect, Sam Spaniolo, to answer any technical questions you may have. Thank you.
Very good. Let's see if there are any panel members, questions for this applicant. Mr. Nipfel, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you address the variance number 6? You've got a deficiency in the front yard setback, what you've done to try and address the bylaw and what challenges led to you only having 25.5%. And the other area that I have some concern with is the side yard setback, which seems to be unworkable. And I'm wondering if you could speak to those.
Mr. Nipfel. Yep, I'll turn it over to my architect, Mr. Spaniolo. Thank you for the questions, Mr. Nipfel.
Okay.
Hi, Sam Spaniolo from 120 101 Erskine. So this is an existing condition. So if you look at the photos, there's already an existing parking spot at the front. There's no reduction to the front yard landscape. It's basically the existing condition. And as far as the setback, we're just keeping in line. We worked hard to maintain the view of the house from the street. There are no changes to the front. The owners have lived here for 18 years and love the street and have a lot of friends. And rather than moving to a bigger property or to a different location in the city, they wanted to stay on the street. They have 2 teenage boys and are running out of space. And so the addition is to the rear. And the intent was to keep that existing house because rather than knock it down and build a new house. So
we get it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, panel? I'm not hearing any. Okay, in that case, we can then take the application into committee and move to a motion. Mr. Reed, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think this is a reasonable application, and the size of the proposed addition is in line with other houses on the street. I appreciate that they're staying with the same side yard setbacks that they have, and that the front yard is an existing condition, so it's workable in its current state. And I think the remainder of the variances are minor and have little to no impact. So I'm happy to move approval subject to urban forestry condition 2.
Seconded by Mr. Nipfel. It is therefore moved and seconded to approve. Those in favor, please show hands. And that vote is unanimous. The motion carries. Application approved. Number 4 is 62 Indian Grove. On this application, we are dealing with the materials submitted. There's an arborist report. Presentation materials, April 18. And again on April 24th from the agent. There are staff reports from Urban Forestry on both April the 19th and again on April the 19th. And there is support in the form of 5 form letters from occupants at 64, 69 Indian Grove, 461 Parkside, also 14 and 16 Indian Grove. There is opposition correspondence also from 59 Indian Grove, Adriana Ballin. So we'll ask the agent to join us now, please, by stating your name.
Good morning, members of committee and chair. My name is Adam Tom of 3 Gilead Place. I'm the architect on the project.
Very good. You have 5 minutes to present your application to the panel.
Just to say to Chair, excuse me, that I will be joined by my colleague Lindsay Dale Harris if I leave her any room on the 5 minutes that is.
If you can share your 5 minutes with him, that's fine.
Let's see how well I do.
I'm unmuted. Thank you.
I also have included, I sent yesterday some updated slides that might help the discussion. There we are. Okay. So I'll begin. Thank you. I'd like to introduce you to the design of the project and the reason that we seek your support with the variances. Over the last couple of years, we've worked closely with neighbors at number 64 Indian Grove to the north and with the city staff, making adjustments and revisions along the way. And the photo we're looking at is along Rideout Street, looking north at the existing house that's there. Indian Grove is to the right, and High Park itself is to the left. The large existing house has been crudely renovated and added to over the years. The interior no longer is original to the building, and these block-like additions have been added over time. We made a attempt to survey the area when we started the design of to determine what gives High Park its distinctive vernacular, and brought that language into the new design. This slide shows an existing coach house at the rear of the property that's up against the rear lot line and the side lot line across the back of the property. It's in very poor structural health. And please note too that there's a lot of retaining walls and existing stairs and bricks which are on the boulevard side of the property line there. And that'll come up later in the presentation. Next slide. This drawing is a cross section that compares the existing extent of the existing house, which is shown in the dashed magenta line, to the new cross section of the proposed house. And it demonstrates that we're conscious in trying to step our building back from the property line to allow as much light and natural air to the one significant neighbor, which is to the north, because this is a corner lot. Next slide, please. This drawing is a site plan that's showing the existing buildings that are on the site, so the large coach house to the back and the large existing building. And the spaces between the two existing buildings is all paved at this time. Next slide, please. And this is an overlay of proposed on top of the magenta color existing. And if you go to the next slide, you can see that in our work, the client and us have really approached this with trying to increase the amount of green landscape spaces at the property, so that the new secondary suite is smaller than the old one and allows for a lot more green space. And there's a lot.
You have about a minute and a half remaining.
All right, let's go quickly. One of the variances is about building length, and it's triggered by an underground connection that links the basement of the new house to the garage below the secondary suite. But nothing happens above grade. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And this shows the new stairs, which is variance number 6, that encroach a little bit past the property line. And the next slide after that compares that to the existing, more egregious, I think, built landscapes. So that speaks to that variance. Lindsay, do you want to speak?
No, sure. I was just going to say I had reviewed the 6 variances. There was a variance for FSI going from 0.6 to 0.63, which I thought was minor. The most significant variance was the building depth, and that is because the zoning considers the secondary suite at the back to be part of the building depth, even though everything is underground between the existing house and the proposed secondary suite. The rear yard setback from 7.5 to 0.43 is really a reflection of the existing condition. So in my mind, that's not serious. You had shown it is minor, it is appropriate, and it fits with the area. And the landscaping that's being proposed is really quite exceptional. So that's really in keeping with the general landscaping in the area. I think you had some slides which showed that.
I'm afraid we are out of time, but thank you for your presentation. Panel members, questions at this time for Mr. Nipfel? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very inventive and imaginative proposal, and there's much about it I really like. I only had one concern, and it may have already been addressed. I can't determine from the plans that are in my agenda whether I think it's the 3rd floor, which is there's a fairly substantial rear balcony with a pool, and on the 2nd floor there's a fairly substantial balcony. Whether there's sufficient screening between those 2 balconies on the property to the north. I noticed that the property to the north is in support, so it may be that you've already addressed that issue. I would welcome some comments on that.
I can answer that. Yes, perhaps pull up the plans. The outdoor area platform is actually on the 2nd floor that has the pool, and it's protected by kind of protection walls around it. So if we go to this plan here, this is the 2nd level. So that's the area where your cursor is and
that's an extended wall where the cursor is. Is that correct? Right where, yeah. Is there
the striped lines are a trellis.
Yeah, I know
the walls I'm talking about are pochade in gray, and it's called High Park. That's the name of the little walled garden. So it's like a little enclosure that protects privacy from both across the street and to the neighbors to the north, and it just looks over High Park in the distance.
at the top of the northerly top of the floor plan, just off the study, is that an extended wall? To the, let me see.
To the left of the study.
Yeah, is that an
extended wall? That's because it's not gray, it's a parapet. It's not extended. Because we were conscious of eroding that area so that more light would get to the northern neighbors.
And that's an issue you've discussed with the neighbor to the north. And
that's correct. They've seen views of this side of the building. The plan itself is kind of barbell shape, intentionally to give more space to the neighbors. We were all the way along working with them on keeping that an open, friendly side of the building instead of a great wall.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moderator, we have a person standing by. Let's have that person join us, please.
Hi, Adriana, you've been unmuted and you may turn on your video.
Hi, I'm not sure how to turn on my video here. Oh, there. Wait. Can you see me?
No, we don't.
Yeah, it's not working. Okay, there it is. Hi, my name is Adriana. I'm the neighbor on 59 Indian Grove. And my opposition is basically, I don't think that these drawings represent the real area of what the house is going to be. It might be in the process of design, which is a normal thing, but I have a few items I'd like to discuss. The first is the contextual heritage value of Indian Grove. While it is not a heritage area, that does not mean that it does not have heritage value. There's embodied energy. There's a representation of interesting architecture on the street, and I find that this house has absolutely no regard to context at all. While I'm fully in support of contemporary architecture, I think there should be a review by the City of Toronto Preservation Services to evaluate the affinity of the design to the context. That's the first point. Considering that the streetscape is public realm, and we do have technology that's very clear in the street and in the neighborhood. Second item I'd like to draw attention to is the pool. Is it possible to see the elevation of the pool in elevation or section? There. So you got a floating pool on the second floor that has no support, either laterally, cantilevered. You can see in plan, if we look at the plans, there's absolutely no structure designed to it. Nope, the other side. And there's no structure underneath it. So that indicates to me that this project has not been fully designed. And the area, if you go to the plan, on the second floor, that would be where the exit to the pool is. So where's the exit to the pool? Is it from the library? Goes differently from elevation. As you can see, this is not a real project. I don't think it's real. It hasn't been finalized. And if we look at the living room, please, on the main floor. Yeah. So there's the area of the living room is just a big sofa in the middle, and there's absolutely no space for people to be there other than sitting. So it's not a realistic drawing. And I'm saying this from my perspective. I am an architect. I work with the University of Toronto. There's also deficiencies in space and area in the theater area. The way that the screens are set up, they're not visible from either the front or the side. It requires at least double the area in order for that space to function. So basically my concern is that this is being passed as a minor variance, but it's not, because it's not representing the real dimensions. I'm suspecting that once it has a permit passed as a minor variance, it will develop the design and then request another minor variance, and so on and so forth. And it is not. It's a major demolition that shows no connection in terms of design to the context, which is, and I have to disclose, I sat on the Heritage Toronto Preservation Board for 8 years, so I'm very familiar with the subject matter. And the fact that there's no heritage, that it's not a designated or a listed house nearby, doesn't mean that it does not have heritage value. So there's a lot of work to be done. I applaud the intent to have a contemporary house, and I'm not 100% opposed to that. However, I do question the city's vision. So if the city wants to go to a green net zero in 2040, well, this project is pretty much the opposite of green. It's demolishing a very stable and well-kept house. It's reducing the density from 3 or 4 housing units to 1.
Adriana, I shall ask you to make your final comments now, please.
Yeah, right. So the city is looking for densification. This is the opposite of densification. So basically what I'm saying is this is not a minor variance. The areas are misrepresented. This project is not designed in full. And I think the city, and I have requested the city to do a further review of the heritage context and some of the
And your
environmental.
time is now up.
Thank you. Right on
Thank
time.
you. Let's see if panel members have any questions to put to you, panel. I am not hearing any, so we shall now return to the applicant, who will have an opportunity to comment on what that speaker said in rebuttal. Applicant.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adriana, for your concerns and for voicing your opinion on this. I think like it seems like there was three major concerns of yours that if I can speak to those three, and then hopefully that'll address some of your concerns. One was a concern about structural capacity and whether we had figured out how this building was going to function, mechanically or structural. That is already well underway, and I can assure you that we're working with some very good consultants on making sure that what we show is what is going to be built in that regard. We're also, regarding areas of program of living rooms and various spaces within the house, they have been carefully worked out with our client and with our consultants to make sure that the functions of the building are achievable. And we also understand that we're bound to these dimensions through this process of seeking variances, that we're not going to be building something beyond what is shown here. Otherwise, it would trigger more problems with the bylaws. Regarding the context, the building is a modern building, but we did start the design process by touring the neighborhood and trying to discuss what aspects make High Park area so distinctive. And we determined that one of the things that is so marvelous about the original buildings of the area are deep covered porches, very beautiful brickwork and careful detailing on bricks, as well as a commitment to generous landscaping and thoughtful spatial planning around the building. And those were guiding principles when we took on this project. And in a modern way, we have deep porches on two sides of the building that open up to the street, for instance. We're using very beautiful materials that will enrich and talk to the neighbors along the road as well. I hope that answers some of the concerns that you have.
Okay, thank you very much. Panel members, questions for the agent? Mr. Nipfel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I asked previously about the balconies, I may have not been clear. I meant the second floor is where the pool is, but then on the third floor, there's something called the meadow. Am I correct in assuming that that's basically a green roof, but it is accessible off of the bedroom, I believe? And it's not intended to be a balcony so much as a kind of, well, I guess one might call it a wildlife preserve or just a green space off of the bedroom. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct. It is just a green roof, and it only has an accessible window for the odd time you have to tend to it. But it's just an irrigated grass roof at that point, not somewhere that's accessible as a sitting area.
Okay, and my second comment, I guess, is the only area that I have difficulty with in the application is the number under variance number 3. And standing on its own without any plans to support it, that could result in a god-awful plan, an awful building. I'm not suggesting that that's what you're doing, but a building without any constraints that has that depth could be really problematic. I'm inclined to think that should you receive approval from this committee, that we should tie any approval to the plans that you've got before us. And my reason for that is to ensure that the depth is seen as the result of that link and not of basically covering the entire site with a building. Would you have any difficulty with that?
Thank you for that thought. I think that's appropriate in this case because we tried to find a way to separate those two, the result of that connection. And we're only happy to tie it to this plan
Yeah.
in order to make that work for you.
And I to Mr. Nipfeld, that's something we'd actually discussed before this meeting, and I think it's a very good point.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, we can now take this application into committee. If there's any discussion, or to move to a motion. Mr. Cheng,
I'll
go right
just
ahead.
start by making a comment. I think the applicant had done a lot of studies to understand the context of the site and recompose the elements in a different way that we can anticipate the future. And I like the fact that there's no, all these landscape reductions. The density might be bigger than the others, but it's been composed in a very sensitive way. So I would like to support the application.
Do you care to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the application. I don't think there's any condition.
Forestry 2.
Sorry, forestry number 2.
And would you consider tying it to plans for the reason I mentioned earlier?
And yes, and please include the cow's comment into the condition, please.
Very good. And that is seconded by Mr. Nipfel. It is therefore moved and seconded to approve. Those in favor, please show hands. That's a unanimous vote. It carries the motion, and the application is so approved. Thank you. Item number 5 is 566 Bathurst Street. And we'll ask the agent to join us, please, by stating your name.
Lopes from MXL Engineering, and we are located at 1649 Sinclair Avenue West.
Do you mind repeating your name, please?
Bruno Lopes.
Okay, very good.
Lopez. Makes
Very
it
good.
easier.
Okay. Okay, panel members, on this one, does anyone wish a presentation?
No.
Any questions? Not hearing any. All right then, is anyone on the panel ready with a motion on this application? Mr. Reed, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. We only have the one variance before us, and it is minor. And looking at what's being proposed, it's a very small addition towards the rear that will have very limited impact. And so I think this is kind of as simple as it gets. I move approval of the application, subject to the community planning condition that the approval be tied to the plans.
Thank you. Is there a second? That is
Peter, would you consider friendly amendment to screen the balconies on the north and the south edge?
Sure. Sounds good, Carl.
Okay, with that, I'd second it.
Okay, and that Mr. Nipfel, I assume, represents a second?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so moved and seconded, therefore, to approve, subject to balcony screening. Those in favor, please show hands. And that vote is unanimous. Motion carries, application approved. Number 6 is 2211 Queen Street East. On this application, panel has before it submitted materials, revised site plan floor plans, April 20. Second revised site plans, April 21. Revised cover letter, April 21. Previous decisions by the committee, 2021 and 2022. Cover letter agent, April 20. Email from City Planning. A zoning waiver from the agent. There is a staff report from City Planning. And there is interest or concern from 2213 Queen and opposition from 94 Ludi Avenue. Okay. So let's just check, moderator. Could you check whether the, let's check with the speaker who is listed in interest to see if they wish to speak.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've tried to locate her by email and phone and cannot
Do
find
so.
her.
Okay, fine. Okay, then. If you can, let me know. Otherwise, we'll go to the agent. Join us, please, agent, by stating your name.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Saba Metno from QBS Architects. I am the architect agent.
Good morning to you. Okay, panel. Questions here, panel, for the agent. Mr. Reed.
Thanks, Chair. Well, more just housekeeping, but can we just confirm the variances being requested? I know they've been amended.
Absolutely. So we have, as you have seen from the correspondence before you, we have been working with planning, and now before you, we are only requesting 3 variances. We have eliminated variance number 3, which is the encroachment onto the angular plane.
Okay, let's go slowly. Number 3 is eliminated at your request.
Correct.
Very good.
And
Go ahead.
Variance number 4 has been reduced, the building height, from 13.26 to 12.5 meters.
12.5 is the revised number.
Correct. Variances number 1 and 2 remain unchanged.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Moderator, any do we have that speaker?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I still cannot locate the speaker.
That's fine. Okay, then. Okay, in that case, panel, we can actually, no further questions. We can take the application into committee and move to a motion. Is anyone comfortable with the motion? Mr. Reed, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I think as amended, this is a very supportable application. The variances that remain are minor, and especially given the setting on Queen Street, on the south side of Queen Street, these are very appropriate. And I think this represents a good redevelopment of a Main Street project. So I'll move approval of the application as amended, subject to the community planning condition of the approval being tied to the plans.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Nipfel, I understand you are recused on this application.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I had the wrong number. I'm on number 7. I'm recusing myself on. Pardon me. I'm participating in this one.
Okay, you're participating now, but 7.
I gave you the wrong number at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, that's okay. We can handle that. Okay. So Mr. Nipfel is voting on this application. He will be in recusal on the one to follow. It is moved to approve. Is there a second? It is seconded, Mr. Nipfel. Moved and seconded. Approval. Those in favor, please show hands. Motion carries. Vote unanimous. Application is approved. Number 7, 502 Rushton Road. On 502 Rushton, the panel has before it those materials submitted. There's a previous COA decision from 2013, and there is a response to a letter of objection from the agent, April 19. There is support from 508 Rushton Also, in the form of form letters from 503, 501, and 275 Arlington. Also 506 Rushton. There is also correspondence in opposition from 500 Rushton, from 498 Rushton, and also from 505 Rushton. Okay, so let's have the agent join us, please.
Is Alessia Sopelsa of A. Sopelsa Architect, Inc. I am the applicant architect.
Very good. Good morning. You have 5 minutes to present your proposal to the panel. Go ahead, please.
Okay, well, good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'll begin by thanking all of the neighbors. Many have submitted letters of support and a few letters of objection. I'd like to thank in particular the neighbors directly to the south of us, Mr. and Mrs. Finestone. While they do have some concerns, they also recognize that the design of this proposed addition does consider the impact it would have on the street and on its neighbors. However, my clients and I do not consider this to be an oversized project, as these neighbors have characterized it in their letter of objection, as neither the proposed lot coverage nor the density exceeds what is allowed in this neighborhood. I believe that the trepidation stems from the number of variances we seek. We'd like to just clarify that 2 of the 8 variances relate to the existing detached garage at the rear of the property. My clients were completely unaware until a recent survey was commissioned that the contractor had built the garage slightly larger, slightly closer to the north property line than was shown on the permit drawings. So the requested variances are simply to legalize what has existed there for the last 10 years. The height increase we are proposing in our application is as of right and does not in and of itself require a variance. Unfortunately, no modification to the design other than tearing down the current garage and rebuilding it would bring it closer to conforming to the 40 square meter allowable GFA. The last of the 8 items in the zoning notice simply requests confirmation that the property has access and use of the rear right-of-way to enter the garage. Of the remaining 5 items, 4 of them directly relate to the proposed enclosure of the existing front porch. We would like to point out that this is very common practice in the City of Toronto, and on Rushton Road alone, between the immediate streets to the north and the south, there are 12 houses that have done so. We simply propose to enclose the porch. We're not asking to extend it out to the side, towards the front, or to increase its height. But closing in the open space between the pillars results in requiring setback variances. The overall massing will not change. The enclosed area does not contribute to a density or lot coverage that requires a variance. I would like to point out that we could take the gross floor area created by enclosing the porch and add it to the back. However, this transfer of usable space to the back would result in an additional and as of right 5.5 feet of overall length and solid wall. So we believe that the solution we're proposing is actually more appealing and less obtrusive to the neighbors. With respect to the variance related to the amount of soft landscaping, we just like to point out that we are increasing the amount that currently exists from 13.7 to 30.5, thereby more than doubling what soft landscaping there is now. I would just like to end by mentioning that my clients have approached Mr. and Mrs. Finestone, and in the spirit of cooperation, they've invited them to share their preference for cladding materials for both the enclosed porch and the side walls of the addition. My clients are committed to both the improvement of their family home, which they obviously want to make as visually appealing as possible, but also to maintaining a good relationship with their neighbors, and their offer to work with them still stands. I hope this helps any concerned neighbors to better understand the variances we're requesting here today. And as always, we remain open to friendly discussions with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me ask you, Agent, are any of the variances as they appear on the public notice to be changed? Do you wish to change any of them here for the purposes of this?
We would prefer not to.
I beg your pardon?
We would prefer not to, but as I said, we're open to discussion. Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. No, that's fine. I just wondered whether you actually had a change in mind that we hadn't incorporated.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? No. Okay. Let's go on to the first registered speaker in opposition.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Peter. You've been unmuted and you may turn on your video.
All right. Oh, and I can turn on my video. Okay. You have, okay, you got it. Hello, my name, and you can hear me, Mr. Chair?
Hear you very clearly. Please state your name.
Okay, my name is Peter Finestone. I'm here with my wife, Deborah Stewart Finestone, and we live at 500 Rushton Road. I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak today. You have our letter in the materials, so I'm not going to repeat those. I'm only going to speak for about a minute. It is of interest, and you described the letters of support. I forget the word you used, but they're form letters written by the same author. And so there's not that much support from the street. Their theme is that the neighborhood will not be damaged, and I quote, would only serve to enhance the visual appeal of the street. And as the architect said, my objection is not generally from the street, as the others have said, but it's really about what's going on in the backyard. And I don't think that the neighbors have really stopped long enough to consider what's going on back there. And whether it's as of right or not as of right, it seems to me that there's some significant problems when you have a house like 502, where what you're essentially trying to do is shoehorn a suburban home and its elements into a lot that should be 25% wider and 10% longer. I suggest the variances, when you look at all of them together, confirm that what's being proposed for the backyard are not appropriate. Our letter, as owners of 500 Rushton Road, and we've been here over 30 years, focuses on the negative impact of our backyard, the green space proposed, and the overall building at the rear of 502. Sure, in the drive-by, the street might look enhanced, but one of the reasons we find ourselves in the city's most desirable neighborhood is our green and relatively large backyards for downtown addresses. Once these are traded away through variance applications, I suggest that our property and the ones around us will be less desirable. Certainly, my property will be less desirable with a large extension jutting into what is now an open and somewhat green space. Specifically with respect to my house, the views from my window on the ground floor and second floor and from my yard will be depreciated and not enhanced. Additionally, the proposal before the committee is environmentally unsound and counter to the city's goals around climate change. What I'm asking for is relatively modest, and I think basically deals with variance number 3, the rear yard softscaping. First, the neighbor to my north and I dealt with his neighbor 2 or 3 years ago, and together we worked to reduce the impact of that house. And I would ask that we do the same thing, that the plane of the addition not exceed the existing plane of 504 Rushton. And secondly, that somehow we deal with the softscaping and not reduce it from 50% to 30%, but something significantly less. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Panel, questions here for the speaker? No. Okay, thank you for those comments. We have another registered speaker standing by. Let's carry on.
Hugh, you've been unmuted and you may turn on your video.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. This is Hugh Couchman, 498 Rushton Road. Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to make some comments just in addition to the letter that my wife and I sent. We're concerned over the substantially increased, what you might call mass of the proposal at 502 Rushton Road. And this is clearly evident if you look at the elevations of the entire lot. So for example, pages 26 and 27, if you compare pages 26 and 27, the existing and proposed, you can see that there really is substantial increase. And of course, this is a trend which we see and a number of houses which have been renovated in this area in particular. But they in many cases are out of proportion with the existing stock. And as we heard from Peter Finestone, this really does, in fact, diminish one of the things that attracts people to this area in the first place. I want to make just brief mention. If you go further on, you'll see the entire lot, including the garage. Yes, and then the following slide. So the proposal with the garage is to increase the height a little bit. That's not so bad, but it'll make a flat roof, and this is already quite an imposing structure. It'll become more so. However, I want to concentrate mainly on the backyard and the backyards of the neighbours. We've heard that the front will probably not be affected that much. The backyards of the neighbours tend to get overshadowed by these big new buildings which project. One particular thing, of course, which happens is that the amount of backyard gets decreased. And we've heard that the dwelling is going to increase to 50% of the lot, up from 39% at present. And not only is this an absolute reduction in the backyard area proposed, but the fraction that is green space, as we've heard, softscape, is proposed to fall to 30%, significantly below the 50% required by the bylaw. However, this softscaping percentage includes a swimming pool and 2 small strips of land surrounding the garage. So calculating green space without the pool leads to only 19% of the backyard being green space, which of course is way below the 50% required by the bylaw. Now, to be honest, my wife and I looked to see what the definition of softscaping was, and it's not at all clear whether or not a pool counts as softscaping. I don't really see how it can, but perhaps it does, and the committee will know better than I. But given the ecological motivations for maintaining green space, and the fact that pools are in fact ecologically very damaging because of water, energy, chemical use, etc., and the need to deal with these things in the environment or the waste system, we would strongly recommend or hope that the committee will see fit to perhaps see if we can modify, or this component can be modified. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to you. So, Mr. Couchman, I'll ask you, you did a calculation, and by your calculation, you concluded that the pool is part of the 30%. Is that correct?
Yes, if you look at page 5 of this proposal.
Let's see if we can, okay. Of the plans, right?
Yes, yes.
Can we pull that up, page 5? This is it?
No, this is not page 5.
Page 5, or does it have a number? Does the drawing have a number?
Sorry, the 5th page.
Does the drawing have a number down in the bottom right corner?
You can see this. It's this page I'm looking for. There's a table. So A02.2B. Yes, there's the next page, subsequent page.
2B, okay.
Yes, so if you look at this, it's quite clear that the backyard, they've got garage plus H1 plus pool plus S1, S2, S3, and S4. And eventually, when you work down the next 2 lines, the pool plus S1 plus S2 plus S3 plus S4 is what they count as softscaping, and the remainder, the garage and H1, is what's counted as hardscaping.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, panel, for this speaker? Not hearing any. Okay, so we've heard from the two registered speakers. We'll go back now to the applicant, who will have a chance to respond to the two speakers in rebuttal, but only to the issues that they brought up. So let's go back now to the applicant.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the neighbors for their comments. I'll start by responding to the appropriateness of the backyard, I believe Mr. Feinstone mentioned. I believe that that is subjective, and if we look at the existing site plan, if we can go to that page, yeah, you'll see that my clients inherited this backyard. There is a lot of deck, a lot of hardscaping. There is a frame shed back there with really just that small center of soft landscaping. And that represents 13.7% of the current backyard. So we believe that what we're proposing is beautifying it. And I will confirm that the pool is included in soft landscaping. I can provide the exact bylaw section if you'd like. But we are more than doubling it. However, we are prepared to redesign the backyard so that we bring the soft landscaping up to 40%. So a midway point between the 30 we're currently proposing and the 50 required by the bylaw. I would, bring that to the neighbors. I believe Mr. Feinstone also commented on the plane of the addition. And again, we're proposing an overall length of 15.085 meters. The bylaw requires 17 meters. So we are well within what is appropriate, what is the bylaw considers appropriate. So I'm not sure that's really something that can be up for discussion in front of Committee of Adjustment. Also, this last neighbor mentioned substantial increase. I would just again point out that none of the variances that we're really seeking here relate to height or density. So again, I'm not sure that this is something that really is fair game to be brought up to Committee of Adjustment. I think I've addressed all of their concerns, but if you have any questions, panel members, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Okay, panel questions. Mr. Cheng, you lead off. Mr. Cheng, you are muted.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. So I am wondering how that angular plane is affecting the street, the shadows. And can you just give me more description of how that get into? Maybe we can look in an elevation view to even give me a better explanation of how that works.
Would you like to see the side elevation? There we go. Yep. So again, the 15.05 meter length is all the way to the back of the first floor. So at the second and third floor, we did step back those floors to really minimize any shadow on the neighbors and really reduce the massing as much as possible. But again, we do have, as of right, up to 2 additional meters to go further out, but we thought that this was the most considerate approach to our neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Reed, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair. To the applicant, thank you for offering to increase the rear soft yard landscaping to 40%. Can you confirm that that's what you're doing and what that would equal in square meters, please?
Oh, absolutely. If I can just have a few minutes to do some
For sure.
calculations, I apologize. Okay, so the backyard
Take your time with this. This is important because what we're...
Yeah.
We're going to change the variance number 3.
Okay.
So take your time and get the calculation correct.
It would bring us to 57 square meters.
Okay, so it would read 40% and 67 even.
No, 57. 57.
57.
That's correct.
5700?
0.12, if you'd like to get very specific.
57.12. Okay, square meters. Meters
Yes.
squared. Okay. So,
And One other question, Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The third story balcony in the rear, I'm just wondering if it would make sense to have screening on the north and south side to prevent overlook to the neighbors' yards?
Absolutely. We're happy to do that.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions, panel, for the applicant? In that case, we can take the application into committee for some discussion before we move to a motion. Mr. Reed, go right ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to start. I think that this is a very reasonable application, and particularly my major concern was the rear yard soft landscaping, and I'm pleased to see that some improvement has happened there. The variances being requested are minor. I think the side yard setbacks are remaining as exist, and the proposal steps back towards the rear, and I think that's helpful in decreasing the massing. And there's no height variance and no length or depth variance. So I think as amended and with the condition of the balcony screening, I support this.
Mr. Reed, can I ask you? I think I too was very encouraged to hear the applicant make the suggestion of 40%. 40% is a significant improvement over 30, and I was very concerned about the 30 in view of our focus on soft landscaping. But we have now that amended as far as the amount of variances asked are concerned, but the drawings won't reflect. The existing drawings that we have won't reflect that. So let me just ask the Deputy Secretary Chair, if we were to approve this without the drawings representing the backyard accurately, because we're basically what we're saying to the applicant is make it add up to 40%, but the drawings will not be in sync with that. So do you have any concerns about any approach you might suggest to us to?
Through the chair, you could tie the application to plans excluding the site plan or excluding landscaping, or you could simply tie to plans and include a second condition that variance number 3 be reduced to X.
Variance number 3B actually.
Or, sorry, increased.
Increased to 40.
Yeah, change, whatever the change is, you could put a condition saying variance number 3, landscaping be increased to the change 40% and 57 meters square.
Okay. All right. There's a way that we could achieve that. Mr. Cheng, any thoughts on this one you want to?
No, I think it's very positive. I like the massing. I like the fact that the landscape has been increased, and I think there are other cases that we have approved with similar situation where the applicant is willing to increase without updating the site plan. So I feel confident that the zoning examiner will re-examine the drawings when they will submit and make sure that number is what we're looking for today.
Here's another question, gentlemen, that just occurs to me. Are we satisfied that the 40% we're talking about includes the pool? Or do we want our 40% revision to exclude the pool? Any thoughts on that? Mr. Reed?
I think it's not.
Yeah, well, I think pools are included as open space in the bylaw, so I would have a hard time disregarding that.
Very, very good. Mr. Reed, would you like to go ahead and frame a motion?
Sure, thank you. I move approval of the application as amended. That's with variance 3 being increased to 40%. And I would also add the condition that the third floor rear balcony have privacy screening of 1.5 meters on the north and south side.
And the Deputy Secretary Treasurer suggested this method of tying to plans with the condition that the rear soft landscaping be increased to 40.
Sure, yeah, whatever she sees fit in terms of being most clear in this situation.
Through the chair, if the applicant has amended the application and amended that variance, then there is no need to put an extra condition for that variance.
Good, very good. Okay. Very good. Is there a second to that motion? There is a second, Mr. Chang. Moved and seconded, therefore, to approve the amended application. All in favor, please, show of hands. And that vote is unanimous. The amended application is so approved. And we move on to number 8. Thank you, panel. Number 8 is 266 Willow Ave. And on 266 Willow, panel has before it plans submitted, one photograph of the rear, and there is comment from Community Planning, April 20th, and Urban Forestry, April 19th. So let's have the applicant join us, please, by stating your name.
Morning, Mr. Members. My name is Werner Cram. I'm the agent for the owners, the property of 266.
Good morning to you. Okay. And panel members, any questions here for the agent? Anyone like a presentation?
We're glad to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. I'm not hearing any, though, Mr. Cram, so Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you speak to the south side yard setback for the pool? It seems to me to be somewhat arbitrary and places the pool rather close to one of the neighbors.
Yes, if I could address that through you, Mr. Chairman. That was the setback, or the reduction in the setback from 1.2 meters for the pool was a request by Urban Forestry because there's a tree on the northern property that they wanted a little more space. Originally, we had it at 1.2, the required setback from the lot line. Urban Forestry requested, what can you do to move it further away from the tree? And we came to this resolution.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we can take it into committee, moving to a motion. Mr. Nipfel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a very straightforward application that frankly doesn't have any negative impacts on the neighborhood or the surroundings, in my view. I would be pleased to move approval of the application, subject to forestry condition number 2, the planning condition, which is to tie the approval to plans. And I would like to add a condition as well that we screen the main floor deck because it's raised on the north and the south edges.
Thank you. Does that have a second? It is seconded, Mr. Chang. Moved, therefore, and seconded to approve. Those in favor, please show hands. Vote unanimous. Motion carries. Application approved. Item number 9 is 61 Armstrong Avenue. The only materials before the panel on this one are those submitted at time of application, 4 photographs, and a planning opinion letter from planner Graham Barrett, April 18th. Let's have the agent join us, please. State your name.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Graham Barrett, SGL Planning and Design, 1547 Bloor Street West.
Good morning. Okay, panel, questions for the agent? Mr. Nipfel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This isn't a question so much as a comment. I'd like to congratulate you, Mr. Barrett, on a very, very good covering letter. It was very helpful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not hearing any questions, so we can take this application into committee for a motion. Mr. Reid, please.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, to Carl's point, I echo that. It is a good piece of work to support the application. The variances being requested are few and minor. I think the only thing that caused me a bit of pause was the depth, but it's in line with what's in the neighborhood, and I think that the structure as proposed is reasonable, and in limiting it to 2 stories at the rear, that lessens potential impacts. So I'm happy to move approval with no conditions.
Thank you. And that is seconded by Mr. Nipfel. Moved and seconded. Approval. Those in favor, please. And that vote is unanimous. 2. Carry. The motion, application approved. Number 10 is 305 Manning Avenue. Here the panel has before us submitted materials from the application, plus revised materials, April 17, site plan, floor plans, elevations, and a cover letter from the agent, April 17. There is correspondence in support from 299, 301, 303 Manning, 248, 252 Manning, and 231 Claremont. Okay, let's have the applicant join us, please.
Christopher, you've been unmuted.
Christopher Walker, 87 Brickworks Lane.
Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning.
Okay. Christopher, I'm going to ask you to stand by for a moment while I check with the registered speaker we have. Moderator, could we put on Ruth, please? Ruth Mandel?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've confirmed with Ruth Mandel that she won't be speaking.
She won't be speaking, okay. In that case, panel, does anyone request a presentation? Does anyone have questions for the applicant? Mr. Nipfel, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot about this application that I think is quite reasonable. The only concern that I have is a clarification one. Could we go to the 3rd floor plan, please? Could you clarify the roof deck appears to only cover a portion of the roof, and there's a dotted kind of grid around it. Does that indicate that there's landscaping around the deck? Is there screening that provides privacy for the adjacent owners? Could you clarify that, please?
Yes, it does not represent landscaping. The area is too small to do a green roof there. By the time we put a foot or so perimeter around the parapet, there's no significant area left for landscaping. So no, that will be just roofing. Standard.
Okay, and how, that's a 4 square meter roof deck, right?
That's right.
It's in compliance with the bylaw.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hearing no further questions, let's take the application into committee for a motion.
So, do you think we should add a condition of privacy screens?
Is that to me, Aaron?
Yeah, for you.
I think there should be screening on the north and the south edges, yes.
And that you can also make sure the boundary is set.
Yes.
Very good. Anyone prepared to move a motion?
Aaron, was that a motion then?
Oh, yeah, I'll make a motion to support this application. There is no forestry condition, but we would like to add the screening criteria at the balcony, for the balcony at the back on the east and west side.
North and south.
Sorry, north and south side.
Okay. That is seconded by Mr. Nipfel. Moved and seconded to approve. Those in favor, show hands, please. Unanimous vote, motion carried, and application approved. Thanks. Number 11 is 118 Booth. Again, just a very few materials before the panel. Those submitted at the time of application, 3 photographs of the property, January, and a staff report from TRCA. So let's have the agent join us now, please.
Andrea, you've been unmuted.
Yes, hello. I'm the agent, Andrea Christoph of 28 Shannon Street. I am the applicant and the architect for the proposal.
Very good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see, Andrea, if anyone on the panel wants to ask you anything. Panel members? Mr. Nipfel.
Andrea, are the variances related to the front yard? Are they existing conditions?
They are existing conditions.
So the 0.97 is already there?
Correct.
Okay. Were you going to add something else?
Well, really, it's a minor variance. All the setbacks, except for the rear yard setback, are existing conditions. The owner has a growing family. At the time we made the application, he had no children. He's now expecting a second. And we're requesting to go from a 3-unit dwelling to a 2-unit dwelling to accommodate his now growing family. And part of the application is simply a 2nd-story addition and enclosure of the front porch.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder, perhaps it's not necessary, but I don't understand. Do we have to go through the process for the loss of rental accommodation because the units are going from 3 to 2, or is that obviated by the fact that the house is still going to be occupied by, or the two-unit house is going to be occupied by the same family? Could the Secretary Treasurer give us some advice?
Through the chair, the applicant would fill out a rental housing and demolition screening form, and the housing section would review it and intervene if they had a concern. I do not see anything on file in this regard.
So we don't need to add a condition relative to that.
Through the chair, no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Let's move then into committee and move toward a motion. Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very straightforward application. The variances are extremely small for the most part, portions of a meter. I think it's, then the expansion is in fact in absorbing space that already exists. The variances are in large part, as the applicant indicated, generated by existing conditions. I don't see any downside to this application, and I'd like to move approval without conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Reed seconds that motion. Moved and seconded to approve without condition. Those in favor? Vote is unanimous. Motion carries, and that application is approved. Number 12, 2150 Bloor Street West. Here we have those materials submitted time of application, cover letter from the agent February, presentation materials April 25 from the agent. And there is a staff report from TTC, April 19th. Let's have the agent join us, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miles Weeks. I'm a planner with Photen Consultants. My address is 174 Spadina Avenue, Suite 304.
Good morning to you. Okay, Miles, let me just check with panel members. Would anyone like a presentation on this application? Are there any questions? Apparently not. Miles, is there anything you want us to know about the application? A single point that is important you think we should know?
No, nothing in particular. I'm happy to clarify if there's questions, but I think it's fairly straightforward.
Very good. Okay, panel, we can take it into committee for a motion. Anyone ready? Mr. Reed, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. We only have the one variance before us, and it's related to just area of a restaurant use, and being on Bloor near subways and in a very active space. I see no negative impact of approving this application. I can't see why that would be a problem. So I'll move approval subject to TTC review.
Very good, thank you. That has a second, Mr. Nipfel. Moved and seconded to approve. Those in favor, please. Show of hands. Vote is unanimous. Motion carries, and the application is approved. Number 13, 93 Lightbourne. On this application, the only materials before us are those submitted at the time of the application by the applicant. So let's have the applicant join us, please.
Hello, Mr. Chair and the committee members. My name is Arash Bahamin at 19 Breda Court, Richmond Hill, the agent of the owner at 93 Lightbourne Avenue.
Good morning to you. Okay, thank you. All right, panel members, do you have anything you want to ask the agent? Mr. Nipfel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you clarify that you've had discussions with the owners at 268 and 264? It's unfortunate that people on both sides of the property are objecting, and I'm wondering if you've reached out to them and had any success in resolving any of their concerns.
So as far as I know, the owner, my client, is working closely with the neighbors to provide any clarifications and any concerns they may have regarding this proposal. But I'm not in that position to comment on any specific objections if the neighbors have provided. However, I'm quite sure that the owner is working closely with them to provide clarifications on the construction, staging, or whatever concerns they may have.
Thank you.
Carl, if I may, I think you're looking at the next file. That may be the reasoning here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my note. I've got so many notes. Yes. Thank you for the correction. Okay. Yes. I'm looking at number 14. Sorry, my mistake. I don't have any questions on this application at all.
I thought my file missed something. Yes, thank you.
Okay. I was wondering too. Thank you, Mr. Reed, for figuring out the puzzle. Because I was wondering too. Okay.
Oh, this is terrible. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
On number 13, are you ready for a motion?
I am ready for a motion. Panel, let's go ahead into committee.
I would like to move approval of this application without any conditions. The very, very minor variance request, which has no negative implications. And my apologies for confusing the applicant with the question from the wrong site.
Okay, very good. Is there a second to? That is seconded, Mr. Reed. So it's moved and seconded to approve the application. Please, show of hands, those in favor. That vote is unanimous. The motion carries. The application is approved. Panel has now been on the go here for just about 2 hours, so we're going to recess for 10 minutes and return at 11:37, 11:38. Thank you very much.
Upstairs with Daddy. Come on. Come and see Daddy. Come and see Daddy. Come on. Come and see Daddy. Oh, this is fun.
We resume. And we resume on number 14, 266 Indian Grove. On this application, the following materials are before the panel. Those submitted at time of application. Revised plans, April 21. Revised zoning waiver, April 21. Cover letter from the agent, January 16. Presentation materials, April 25th from the agent. Planning rationale, April 20. And there is a red line public notice showing a revised list of variances received April 21. There is correspondence both in support and in opposition. In support from 35 High Park, 148 Glen Lake, 157 Indian, 497 Keel Street, and 2 form letters from 27 Oakmount and 173 Clendenin. In opposition, there's correspondence from 268 Indian Grove, and there are 26 form letters in opposition, signed by the owners and the occupants at 262, 264, 267, 270, 272, 285A and B, 286, 290, 292, 298, 300, 302, 303 and 4, 310, 318 and 320, 353, 357, 367, 370, 372, and 373 Indian Grove, plus 169 and 173 Keel. So with that, we shall ask the agent, please, to join us by stating your name.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Christian Chen from the Planning Agency, Inc., agent for the applicants, and my address is Suite 138 at 157 Adelaide Street, West Toronto.
Very good. Good morning still to you. Good morning. You have 5 minutes to present your proposal to the panel. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the application is to construct a new 3-story, 4-unit rental building as a fourplex. Just having discussions since the cutoff date for submissions last week, I have spoken to community planning and they have not voiced any concerns or issues with the proposal. I do remember reviewing the detailed concerns that were submitted by the objecting neighbors. Since last Wednesday, I've had a discussion with Mr. Alvin Wong, an adjacent neighbor, regarding their concerns in order to seek any revisions to the plans, and I'm happy to advise the committee that we have removed variance number 1 with respect to main wall building height, and therefore we are seeking, in this application before you today, 3 variances.
Okay, let's go slowly here just for a moment. So variance number 1, at your request, is being eliminated. That's on the height.
That is correct, sir.
And that the other 3 remain and they stand unchanged in terms of detail?
Yes, sir, that is also correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
So note that my time is now limited, but just to explain a brief portion of the proposal, the proposed floor areas of each 2-bedroom dwelling units are approximately 90 to 95 meters square. There's also a 1-bedroom unit in the basement proposed at about 620 square feet. 3-story building will have a height of 10.5 meters. It is in compliance with the maximum permitted building height, as well as the main wall heights now that we've removed variance number 1. Just like to also note, sir, in describing the property, has a frontage of 7.6 meters and a depth of 38.57 meters.
And you can take an extra half minute in your presentation because we were discussing there. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. So just to note, sir, that if I can direct staff to go to page 6 of the planning rationale, it shows a couple of maps, figure 9 and 10, with regards to the major transit station areas. So this property lies within the boundary of the major transit station area for Keel Street. SAS 653 provides minimum floor FSIs, minimum units of 3 units and 0.5 FSI. So now this is applicable. In going through the variances, and if I could direct staff to go to site plan page 2. Actually, first, sorry, I would like to go to page 14, the revised drawings for the elevations, just to show the extent of the main wall heights, the variance that has been removed, so the committee can appreciate the revisions that were made. This is page 14 of the revised drawings, April 21. So if I could also, I could just jump ahead to the depth. So the variance related to depth for 17 meters. So multiplexes are currently permitted only to have 14-meter depth versus a 17 meters for a detached and semi-detached house in an R zone. So with respect to the draft multiplex official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment that's going to be discussed tomorrow at the Planning and Housing Committee, City Planning is advancing a maximum permitted depth of 17 meters for multiplexes. And this is in line with this, as well as a number of other fourplex developments that I have appeared before the committee to seek approval. So I understand there's a concern with regards to the projection of the proposed balconies and terraces from the adjoining neighbor. I'd just like to note that these elements comply with the encroachment regulations provided in the zoning bylaw and do not require minor variances. However, should the committee seek to approve this application, I would recommend a condition for 1.5 meter privacy screening on both the north and south sides of these balconies. With respect to approved depths, Indian Grove, the Committee of Adjustment certainly has approved greater depths than what is being proposed here, even though this proposal would comply with the bylaw maximum permitted depth for a semi-detached or detached building. With respect to the maximum floor space index, in my opinion, this represents a gentle intensification, providing a missing middle type of multiplex development. Despite this, maximum permitted FSI in the zone being 0.6, COA has approved variances of FSIs for detached and semi-detached homes, which consists of 1 and 2 units, 1.2 FSI at 177, 1.0 at 350, 1.03 FSI at 164 Indian Grove, 0.97 FSI at 174 Indian Grove, 0.91 FSI at 163, 0.97 at 176, and 1.45 at 401 Indian Grove. I'd also like to note too that as part of my supplementary documentation, I provided the draft multiplex zoning bylaw amendment, which removes the maximum permitted FSI permissions for multiplex development. So it's going to be based on a form-based zoning bylaw regulation, whereas where that means that the building would be contained to the maximum permitted building envelope pursuant to setbacks and main wall heights and heights. With respect to the soft landscaping, the soft landscaping is reduced to 67 from 0.75. I'd just like to note too that approvals for soft landscaping have been provided for in the immediate context at 260 at 73%. Also that there are a number of front yard parking pads in the immediate context of reduced soft landscaping, and what has been proposed before you is seeking a reduction in soft landscaping to allow the walkway that extends to the south, and all of this will be permeable paving. So in my opinion, the intent and purpose of the soft landscaping regulation is maintained because the intent is to make sure that there's a degree of soft landscape on the front yard, whether it's a driveway or hardscape paving that is not permeable. In this case, we're proposing permeable paving.
I shall ask you to make your final comments now, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. So with all that, in my opinion, this multiplex proposal meets the intent of the draft multiplex zoning bylaw amendment, as well as the zoning bylaw as it stands today. It's desirable and the impacts are minor. And I recommend approval subject to any conditions that the committee so decides to impose. And thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Panel members, there are 6 registered speakers. Are there any questions you have now for the applicant? Okay. Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, you indicated that you have been, Mr. Chen, you've been working with the adjacent neighbor, and as a result, variance number 1 has been removed. Is that has that addressed the concern of the adjacent neighbor, or was that one of other, were there other concerns as well?
Well, sir, I can understand that there's still maybe remaining concerns with the proposed FSI and the proposed soft landscaping in the front.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay then, moderator, let's have the first registered speaker join us, please.
Alvin, you've been unmuted.
Thanks. I'm just going to try to start the video as well. What's this thing?
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Clearly. What's your name,
Awesome.
please?
Okay. I'll go ahead since the video is not coming on. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Alvin Wong, and our family lives at 268 Indian Grove, next door to 266. I want to start by acknowledging that we support the need for more housing in Toronto, and I can appreciate the motivations of developers like the applicant to make a return on their investment. I've reviewed the city's expanded housing document, as well as a provisional candidate's last-minute planning report and proposed zoning that is not yet law. To be clear, we are not against development because we expect it is inevitable that this property will be redeveloped. We welcome gentle intensification and the missing middle, but this is not gentle, it's huge. To address the applicant's proposed variances in the last-minute planning report directly, I have 5 points. First, community consultation. I've spoken to over 30 neighbors on Indian Grove, and contrary to the applicant's report that there has been community consultation, I'm the only neighbor the applicant has engaged in discussion after they realized there is opposition. We were surprised that not a single one of the 27 families opposing this project was contacted prior to, and when asked, I believe I was told the applicant has been away and too busy. I'd also like to point out that the support letters are from the applicant's fellow investors, developers, and real estate brokers, none of whom live on Indian Grove, and that is clear, as one of the support letters implies we are exclusionary of young families because of NIMBY activism. This is false, because if they took the time to consult with the community, our block of Indian Grove is mainly comprised of young families, and unlike their support letter, we are inclusive of older homeowners as well. 2, floor space index and size. The proposed development exceeds size and density. The planning report conveniently does not mention that on page 11 that the city's own multiplex modeling, a similar size lot was modeled as having an implied FSI of 0.83, which the proposed development exceeds by 16%, and that fourplexes would be appropriate for larger lots. For example, the applicant doesn't reference the FSI of the fourplex across the street, which is 0.72, which puts the proposed development at 33% above that density. It also does not mention the FSI of the triplexes, which also have a lower density than the proposed. The comps the report references are not in the same section of Indian Grove, and many are not close. 3, dwelling depth. On a personal note, we are the neighbors directly north of the proposed development. It would be almost 50% larger than our home, and the proposed depth is 17 meters plus a 2.5 meter egress that will extend almost 9 meters beyond the back of our house. Because we are north of the development, it will tower over us, impact our quality of life, and essentially block the sunlight on our property for the majority of the day. There are also sizable trees that urban forestry should review for construction access. So if the neighbor's interest, especially since we are the young family right next door, I really do hope the committee takes this into serious consideration. 4, soft landscape. In the last 10 years, the committee has approved one property on our block with less than 75% front soft landscaping, which is 73% as 260 Indian Grove. The ones report references are either A, grandfathered, B, not new developments, or C, not in the same block. To be consistent, all other new developments that have 75% or more front yard softscaping. The applicant is requesting 67%, which is below any new development the committee has approved in the last 10 years adjacent to the proposed development. 5, gentle intensification and neighborhood strain. Let me be clear. Many of us support the idea of more housing, and we have supported massive developments in our neighborhood that we can see from our houses. However, the city's expanded housing report values, I quote, providing infrastructure and public service facility in an efficient manner that prepares for projected needs. From living in this neighborhood, all of us can attest that these projected needs have not been adequately provided for. For instance, all the elementary schools in our neighborhood are operating over capacity, with some exceeding 150%. There are more low, mid, and high-rise housing projects scheduled to come online in Hyde Park already. So I asked this committee, where are all the additional children going to go? This is not consistent with the city's values and intentions to provide for projected needs, and this proposed development will only add to that strain. In summary, I urge the committee to carefully consider the considerations raised by the 27 families who have signed letters of opposition to the proposed development. I believe the committee has the opportunity to make decisions that aligns with the city's values and takes in consideration the interests of not only the developers, but also the neighbors. I hope this committee will recommend deferring the proposal and working towards right sizing this development. Thank you for considering our perspective.
Thank you. Panel members, questions? Let's move on then to the next registered speaker.
Stefan, you've been unmuted.
Great, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Hear you clearly.
Excellent. Yeah, hello. My name is Stefan Paulus. I represent the family living at 264 Indian Grove. We've been living at this property for just over 13 years, and we have been residents of Toronto for almost 20 years now. And first of all, I want to clearly state that everything that Alvin outlined previously are concerns that we very much share. And I just want to focus, also in the interest of time, on three points that are important to us. First of all, I want to confirm that there hasn't been any attempt at contacting us from the applicant. We have a mailbox, we have a doorbell that people can leave messages. I work from home, so I'm pretty much available and reachable all the time. And just the fact that no attempt has been made to consult us on this project clearly indicates that the applicant has no interest in fitting in to this neighborhood at all. I also want to draw your attention again to a point that Alvin made during his speech earlier. You went through the addresses listed in opposition and in support of the project. All of the 27 in opposition are in the immediate vicinity and neighborhood of this property, either on the same block of Indian Grove or across the laneway on Keele Street. And as Alvin already said, the letters in support are clearly from areas much further removed from the proposed building. Now, for us at 264, I really want to highlight our major concern in addition to what Alvin had outlined earlier. Clearly, our biggest concern is privacy here. With the proposal of having balconies at every level that extend beyond the footprint of the actual building, with people living at all levels, even with the addition of privacy screens, our privacy will be severely impacted if the proposal goes ahead as planned. So these are the three main points I wanted to really draw your attention to, and as Alvin said, we really hope you consider the points we're trying to make here.
Thank you very much. I have a question for you on the privacy issue. Your sense is that even with privacy screening, your privacy would still be impacted. Could you explain how that would happen, please?
Well, our patio extends, our backyard extends towards the laneway. And, even if there is a privacy screen, if you stand at the other edge of the balcony, it will not cover the entire view of our backyard.
Okay, I see. All right, thank you. Other questions, panel? No. Okay, thank you very much. And we have further speakers to hear from, and I'll just caution them in this regard. You can help the panel if you'll focus on the impacts that you are concerned about and foresee from this development where it approved to proceed. And so tell us about the impacts that you expect to encounter, and let me advise there's no need to repeat what has already been said by the previous two speakers. We are interested in hearing further impacts as they occur to you. So let's go on with that to the next speaker, please.
David, you've been unmuted and you may turn on your video.
Hello, Chair. Committee, my name is David Wong. I live at 272 Indian Grove, and I am an architect. What I have to add to Alvin's eloquently spoken review of the letter is that the part of the multiplex, these new regulations, are that they hide in plain sight. There are other, according to the applicant's letter and urban planning report that was submitted quite late, 9 other multiplexes in the neighborhood. I can say without, with certain certainty, without reservation, that most of these follow a very strong sort of precedent in that the applicant's proposal has 3 doors, doesn't fit in contextually at all into the sort of neighborhood, looking across the entire facade of the street face. The precedent is basically highlighted by a single door on these multiplexes, a hip roof, and a large window within that common shared space that accesses all the units from a stairwell. In this case, that has not basically been followed. It'd be the only house I can think of that has basically 3 entry doors that are visible from the street face. Secondly, all of the multiplexes, as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, have a hip roof. There is one flat roof at 283 Indian Grove, which is also a multiplex, but that one just happens to be only 2 stories in height with a half basement level. So for these reasons, I would say that, you know, they doesn't, for the test number 2, it doesn't fit contextually, and I don't think it's appropriate development for the site, which fails that test. And it is of my opinion that the variances asked for the size and impact fail the first test. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there questions, panel, for this person? Let's move on then to next registered speaker.
George, you've been unmuted and you may turn on your video.
Yes, thank you. I have a poor reception here, so I'm going to proceed without video. Can anyone hear me okay?
We do hear you. Please state your name.
Right. It's George Klein, the property owner of 270 Indian Grove. First of all, you know, I'd like to thank the chairman and the members of the committee who are adjudicating the proceedings today. Imagine the vast majority of cases you face are always full of contention. Sometimes not, but in this case, as you can see, there's not one neighbor in the vicinity that supports the proposed plan here. And no doubt, as you've witnessed, wild self-serving proposals presented to you, like the one that we're looking at here today, and that our family, me and my family, my son, many other neighbors, as you have seen and heard, are all in opposition. I won't obviously repeat Alvin, David, and Stefan's eloquent words here, but I can't stress this enough that the property owner can still achieve his end goal by staying within the bylaws. If the proposed matched, if it is proposed matched to the streetscape that every other house on the street abides by, we would not be here today. The property owner's supporters are contextually out of vicinity, proximity, but all connected in a collective collusion club, being realtors at the same brokerage agency that they're at, being property managers. And, you know, neither the property owner or his supporters will never walk up to 266 Indian Grove to pull out their key and unlock the front door to walk into their family. They'll never sleep one night under the roof, and they will never walk on Indian Grove sidewalks with families and children to walk up to Barrett Park. But he will swing by to gather rent checks. Swinging by, let's use that analogy, let's use a baseball analogy here. they are not only swinging for the fences, but bulldozing and blasting away the fences without any consideration for the negative impact to the Indian Grove community. Again, I will say there are no neighbors in support of their plan, zero. This screams volumes. This is a premeditated objective to build bigger than what is allowed. This is a premeditated objective to make this proposal a precedent. Yes, we all understand Toronto's official plan to increase density along major routes, but Indian Grove is not a major route. Indian Grove has traffic calming measures in place, family with kids playing on the street, and neighborhood barbecues and parties. If you do not reject this plan by keeping within the bylaws that you have given them, a green light to wreak havoc on every other street in the city, and this sets a very dangerous precedent. I'll repeat just before ending off here today, as I started, I emphatically oppose the proposed plan, and if this plan is followed, the same rules and the bylaws that we all abide by, we would not be here today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Panel. Questions? Okay. Next, registered speaker, please.
Radha, you've been unmuted and you may turn on your video. Hi, Radha. Please unmute your device. Radha, can you hear us? Please unmute your device. Through you, Mr. Chair, it appears that the speaker is still muted.
Okay, let's go on to the next speaker and circle back.
And the next speaker, I've tried to contact that person 4 times by email and phone, and I cannot locate.
Okay, so Arthi Sambasavan, we're not able to raise after your repeated attempts, and Radha shows as being there, but we can't hear him, of course. Can you email him or?
Hi, Radha. Please unmute yourself. There's an unmute button at near the middle of your screen.
Okay. Hello. Okay. I can see that Radha has joined the meeting, and we just can't get him unmuted somehow.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I see that he has joined by phone.
Okay.
Retta, can you hear us?
Okay, moderator, I think we have to go ahead now. That's a shame. Let's go then, at this stage, then we'll be returning to the agent, who will have a chance to speak in rebuttal to the issues that were raised by the speakers that we have heard. So let's go back now to the agent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just in a response to a few of these comments as I took notes as I listened in, and I thank the residents for expressing their concerns in this public forum. Just like to address the issue of communications. I think Mr. Wong has mischaracterized the discussions. I did sincerely apologize to him regarding my non-communication because of my commitments with the OLT and TLAB. So I also relay that apologies to the committee. And certainly there was no nefarious intent to not communicate with the neighbors whatsoever. With regards to, I take some offense to the characterization of a last-minute planning report. It was submitted by the deadline, and of course, as you can see by the comprehensiveness of the report, it certainly takes time to do these rationales. With regards to sunlight and intensification with respect to FSI and the building envelope, this is a building envelope that is a as-of-right envelope for a detached or semi-detached house in this R zone. So in terms of impacts with regards to building massing and form, this is what would be outright permitted if it were a building that is not a fourplex, simply because it triggers the variance for the building depth. With regards to trees, there's no urban forestry report or condition that's recommended for this application. With regards to sunlight and shadowing, again, this is within the permitted building envelope, whether the building is massed towards the rear or the front. With respect to public service facilities, sir, the school board is circulated on these applications. They have provided no comments or concerns. With regards to servicing and development engineering, ECS has also not commented. That's engineering and construction services. I have had them comment on some other applications, but in this case, they haven't commented. Also, in regards to, and to reiterate my communications with city planning, Ms. Negro provided that the city planning department has no objections to this application. So in my opinion, sir, this proposal, especially for a fourplex that increases housing options in the neighborhood, representing gentle intensification, is in the public interest, and I can appreciate the neighbors' concerns. But I can provide to the committee that it is in the public interest with respect to all the commenting agencies concerned. With respect to the privacy concerns with regards to the rear terraces, these terraces and balconies are permitted as of right, otherwise they would have identified variances, which could indicate a potential or actual impact of those, and there are no variances related to that. And on top of that, I've offered and recommended the committee, should they decide to approve this application, to impose a condition for privacy screening on the north and south sides of the rear terraces. If I can ask staff to go to page 2 of the planning rationale that I submitted. I would like to address the comments with regards to the facade and fit. So if you can zoom into that image there of the front elevation. In my opinion, when I take a look at this design, I fail to see how this does not fit into the existing immediate context, especially in regards to the adjacent homes. The hip roof character that has been explained by one of the responding neighbors is something that is regulated by the zoning bylaw, but in this case, we have no variances that relate to height or main wall height, since variance number 1 has been deleted. And therefore, this roof profile is permitted as of right in the zoning bylaw. With respect to the front doors, again, there is no variance related to the number of front doors. This is something that is not regulated for this type of development in the bylaw. So in terms of character of front door entrances, this is something that simply cannot be dealt with because there is no variances related to it. And also, I'd like to turn to page 14 of the planning of the revised plans, the elevations. So it's PDF page 14. You can see here the massing of this building when now that variance number 1 is removed, of how it fits in relation to the adjacent buildings. It in fact is lower in height, lower in main wall height than the adjacent buildings as well. And on top of that, I'd just like to add, this is a rental property, and I did get a sense that there's some prejudice with regards to the tenure. Just like to note that the applicant does manage the property personally.
Your time is up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Panel members, questions for the applicant. Go ahead, Mr. Cheng.
Hi. Good afternoon. So, could the staff at the office open the page of the context map, please? Which is the front page of that? That's correct. So, I have a question to the applicant. Do you know the depth of your neighbors, such as 264, 262, and 298?
For number 264, the depth of the building is deeper than what is being proposed. I think I have on page 8 of the revised plans, that's a site plan, or page number 2. We can see that the depth of the proposed dwelling, fourplex, at 17 meters from the permitted front yard or the required front yard setback, generally lines up with the rear main wall of number 264.
Right.
And in fact, you can see where the arrow points to the maximum permitted building, that's the back away from the roof eaves.
Right.
So it's less in depth from the building to the south. Of course, it's more than the building depth of the building to the north, Mr. Wong's property at 268. However, if this were to come in, sir, as a detached building, this would be the permitted depth of detached home.
So the balconies, are they part of the rear exit for your apartment? Or?
Yes, sir. That balcony that you see on the site plan is on the ground floor.
Right.
So there are some projections there for the balconies and terraces to the rear as some amenity space for the dwelling units. And again, just to note, sir, that they are complying with the required, with the permitted encroachments that are regulated by the zoning bylaw and require no variance.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Mr. Nipfel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wong, can you clarify the or identify the material in the parking area? I know you've got permeable pavers at the front, but where the cars are, what is the material that the surface material there?
Sir, they are also permeable pavers, and should the committee seek to approve the application, then a condition could be imposed for those rear yard parking spaces to also be as permeable pavers. I do note that there are existing parking spots in the rear, so this is proposing an improvement to the existing parking condition at the rear yard of the property. And also to note, sir, that no rear yard soft landscaping reductions are proposed, so this is a compliant rear yard.
I just want a clarification. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, then we are at the point now that we can take this application into committee for some discussion, if there is some, moving toward a motion with respect to a decision. So panel, we are in committee now. Anyone have any thoughts they'd like to offer? Mr. Reed, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just start with some comments. I understand that there's a significant amount of opposition to this project, but Honestly, when we look at the variances, I find them really small, and I think this is a desirable application. I mean, the form of the proposal fits in on the street, and not just with its immediate neighbors, but throughout. There are multiple buildings that are this size or larger, and there are also multiple buildings that have multiple units, and I think that's important. It feels like that seems to be the issue that the neighbors have, that this is a multi-unit building, but that's permitted. That's permitted by the bylaw, and I think that needs to be kept in mind. I think this is a desirable application for the site.
Thank you. And anyone else? Mr. Nipfel, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some difficulties with the application, but I also, like Peter, I don't think the concerns that I had are rooted in the variances that are before us. The one area that I really have trouble with is the lack of consultation. I made this point at a hearing last week as well, and I do not understand why anyone undertaking development in this city would not consult with neighbors. It creates bad feeling, and it makes the hearings long and to some extent ineffective. So I am completely on side with the neighbors being concerned about the lack of consultation. I'm not convinced that a deferral for further consultation would result in dramatic changes to the variances. And I think that, to Peter's point, we have to bear in mind that that's what we're here to look at, not the integrity of the actual proposal, but how the variances that are being requested affect the community. And like Peter, I don't think the variances are unreasonable in this particular case, and I think that the use that's proposed, much of it is as of right. But I would be wrong to not comment on the lack of consultation, which is totally unacceptable.
Thank you.
I just want to add that, are we going to propose a privacy screen? If you look at page 818.
In my view, I think the screen should go on the balconies, but also on the main floor deck, because the deck's a raised deck. So I think that there needs to be screening on the north and south edges of all of those surfaces.
And we could also add, if we were moving toward approval, we could add that that rear parking area should be permeable pavers. But when I look at what are now 3 minor variances, and at the actual nature of those 3 individually, my sense is that the application overall is minor and still meets the criterion of being desirable. So that would be my thought on it. Is anyone ready with a motion? Mr. Nipfel, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of this application, subject to providing privacy screening on the north and the south edges of all the rear balconies and the rear main floor deck, and that the parking area in the rear yard be surfaced with permeable pavers.
Is there a second? That is seconded by Mr. Reed. Moved and seconded, and therefore to approve. This is now an amended application with the elimination of minor variance 1. So it is moved and seconded to approve the amended application.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I wonder if we might add another condition, which is that that it be tied to the front elevation plan. And the reason for that is, notwithstanding the concern with the form of the building, perhaps not reflecting the hipped roof dominant character of the area, there has been an attempt here to deal with the 3rd floor in a way that that reflects the hipped roof vocabulary. And I would hate to see that lost. So I think there might be some merit in tying the approval to the front elevation with regard to the 3rd floor.
Sounds like a good idea to me. I think we're all in agreement on that, yeah. Yep, very good. So I'll just check. Staff, have you captured that? So, okay. So, just to backtrack slightly, it is therefore moved and seconded to approve the amended application with those conditions. All those in favor, please, show of hands. And that vote is unanimous. So that motion carries and the amended application is approved. Thank you. And with that, the panel moves on to number 15. Number 15 is 26 MACLEAN Avenue. On this application before us are materials submitted time of application, a revised site plan, floor plan set, April 19th, presentation material from the agent, April 19, arborist report. There's a staff report from city planning, another from urban forestry. There are 2 formal letters in support from 27 and 24 MACLEAN, and correspondence in opposition from 28 MACLEAN. So let's have the agent join us, please.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leo Masterdre. I'm the agent for the owners at 26 MACLEAN.
Good afternoon to you. Okay. Panel members, okay, we do have one registered speaker. Have we been able to raise that speaker, moderator? Yes. So, Mr. Mastandrea, you have 5 minutes to present your proposal to the panel. Go ahead.
Yes, so in regards to variance number 1, floor space index, our FSI is consistent with what's been approved here at the committee. Number 24, 44, 49, and 62 MACLEAN all have similar variances, which is also in my supporting material. Variance number 2, if you could pull up photo number 1 of my supporting material showing the existing front elevation. There's an existing bay window, and basically what we're doing is we're coming to the front of that bay window, so our second floor is not encroaching any closer to the front yard than what's existing currently. Variance number 3, our side yard setback is an existing condition, which also there are no windows on that north side, which would address some of the privacy concerns from the neighbor. Variance number 4 is because of our front yard setback. Because of variance number 2, our front yard setback, it's kind of like a technical variance. Variance number 5 is also, it's minor in nature. It's to do with our overhang at the rear yard. Variance number 6 is basically with the existing landscaping in the front yard, and with the removal of our garage in the rear yard, this will increase our overall landscape and reduce the net impact of our proposal. And if they could tie if the committee could tie the condition of the garage to be removed as a condition of approval, as well also tie my latest drawings submitted April 19th, where we reduced the front second floor balcony from 4 feet to 2 feet to also address the neighbors to the north's concerns. Our proposal is within the allowable height, length, and depth. The plans provide an appropriate rear yard setback. The removal of the garage will create an open backyard where right now it covers approximately 40% of the rear yard. This proposal will allow a young family to have the amenities they require with no negative impact to the surrounding area. We do have support from our adjacent neighbor to the south, and planning has no concerns except they have a condition to provide screening in the rear yard, which we do agree with. And I believe if there's any questions, I can answer them for you.
Okay, let's deal with variance number 6 at this time. It's probably a good idea. So number 6 draws attention. 29% proposed where 75 is required in terms of front yard. Soft landscaping, explain the rationale behind that and the need for that.
It's an existing condition. If you could pull up our site plan on A1, we are not touching the landscaping. It's existing condition. And it's basically, there's not very much room between our porch and the property line. As you can see, we're not doing any work to the front yard at all.
I know, but this is an opportunity perhaps to improve the situation. You're undergoing a major renovation here, if approved. So are there...
Well, that's why we thought by the removal of the garage will help increase the overall landscaping. Okay. I don't think there's really much room to improve it because it's very tight. It's about only 2 or 3 feet from the property line where the steps are. There is a hedge there, but based on the calculations from the zoning examiner, okay, this is what he came up with.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so you're saying your idea to remove the garage? I understand that as a remediating factor. What will you replace the garage area with? What surface?
Soft landscaping.
Soft landscaping. So we could tie that to removing the garage and replace with soft.
Yes.
And replace that soft landscape. Okay. Fine. Any other questions, panel, for the applicant? Okay. And we have a speaker registered here to speak, correct? Yeah, okay. So at this time, then, let's go to the registered speaker standing by.
Colleen, you've been unmuted, and you may turn on your video.
Thank you very much. I'm Colleen Ferguson, and I live at 28 MACLEAN Avenue. And thank you, members of the committee, for your attention to this matter and for allowing me to voice an objection to the proposed change at 26 MACLEAN. Although I've raised a number of issues in my letter, I'd like to focus my comments today on 3 key concerns regarding this application: sunlight, privacy, and sightlines. I've lived at 28 MACLEAN Avenue in the Beaches since 1989, and for those 34 years, I've witnessed a lot of change. Small wooden cottages have been replaced with large new buildings, 2 where there was 1, and the neighborhood has morphed into a high-end real estate market with some of the highest median prices in the city. The houses have, in turn, reflected their increased value, becoming increasingly larger and more imposing. So you might assume that as someone with such a long history on the street that I pine for the good old days, but that's just not true. Many of the changes have improved and beautified the street, and certainly the neighborhood has diversified and become more vibrant, and I applaud this. Therefore, my objections to the changes proposed at 26 are not due to a desire to keep things exactly as they are or to stop people from doing what they want to do. Instead, I'd like to speak to how the application would have a permanent and irreversible impact on my property. Over the years, the houses on either side of me have both added single-story back additions. My backyard is small, roughly 160 meters, and because the buildings on both sides are so close to the property line, the resulting effect is that the backyard feels walled in. I didn't oppose these additions, philosophically or otherwise when they occurred. I believe people sometimes need to renovate to expand their home in order to meet the needs of their family, and I'm not someone who blocks change as a matter of course. However, the plans currently being considered would result in a second story to the existing rear addition with a patio on top. The side yard setback of this is 0.4 meters. In addition to exacerbating the current walled-in effect, the increased height combined with its close proximity to my backyard will significantly reduce the amount of sunlight I receive. As you can see on the proposed 3rd floor plan, the patio has a privacy barrier, which, to be frank, is only appropriate given that the lounging area will directly overlook my deck. However, the effect of this will be that the light blocking height will be greater still. As you can see in my letter, the current 1-story extension blocks sun from about 1/3 of my yard for a majority of the day. A second story and privacy barrier will all but eliminate sun from my tiny yard, except for at the end furthest from the house. If the permit is approved, the net effect will be that when I am on my deck, I will be sitting in the shadows at the foot of an imposing 2.5-story wall. Therefore, I would like to voice my opposition to the second story on the rear addition of the roof and the rooftop patio. Not only does this area add to the already exceeded floor space index, it also dramatically reduces my sunlight and will exacerbate the walled-in effect in my backyard due to the very tiny side yard setback. The other concern I have has to do with the privacy and sight lines. I accept life as a city dweller. I welcome it even. Density is good for the city in multiple ways, and I know I don't need to tell members of the committee this. However, I also believe it's reasonable to expect that there could be places on my property where I might enjoy privacy and the ability to sit without being seen. But the proposed changes to 26, all my privacy will be eliminated. Most houses on my street have a front veranda and likely also have a patio space in the back, 2 spots to enjoy the outdoors. With the proposal before this committee, 26 McLean will have 5 outdoor patios, and this on a tiny lot in a dense neighborhood. As I mentioned earlier, 1 of these in the back will directly overlook my backyard, and 3 in the front that will extend the facade of the house, both into my view of the lake and within view of my primary bedroom window. Obviously, these outdoor patios are to capitalize on the house's proximity to the beach and to increase the number of places one can enjoy views of the lake. However, 26's gain will be 28's loss. The front second floor extension and the front patios exceed the front yard setback and intrude upon my sight lines of the beach, which is a primary reason for living at 28 McLean and an integral part of the value of the house. Additionally, the 3 front patios negatively impact privacy both in and outside of my house. In particular, the second floor balcony with its north
I shall
privacy
ask you
wall
to make your final comments now, please.
will intrude upon views. For these reasons, I ask that the committee consider how this proposal negatively and permanently impacts my house and my family's quality of life. And although I've commented today on only 3 impacts, I ask the committee also to consider the other issues raised in my letter, including soft landscaping. And I note for the committee that the site plan I have does not include a front parking pad that the applicant is also applying for, building volume and neighborhood context. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Panel questions of the speaker? No. Okay. Okay, then let's go back to the applicant, whose opportunity it is now to speak, comment on what has been raised by the speaker in rebuttal. Applicant?
Yes, if you could pull up my drawing A9 dated April 19th, would be the north elevation. So you can see how the existing dotted line is what's shown as existing. We are not coming any further out than the existing on the ground floor. As far as the front is concerned, we're not coming out any further from the front from where the existing bay window is. And as you can see from our illustration, that our addition is fairly small in comparison to what's existing right now, because there's a dormer that goes up and above and beyond, and I don't know if you can see, it cuts through my 3rd floor balcony, and there's a little chimney above that. So that's already causing the shadow effect, as you can see as per her photos. So I do not believe that this addition will impact the shadow effect on our neighbor's property. As far as she mentioned the height, we don't have a height variance. We comply with the height. And as I mentioned before, planning has reviewed the drawings, and they don't have any concerns except for the fact to add screening on the rear yard balcony.
Thank you. Panel members, questions here. Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it true that you're applying for a front yard parking permit?
I do not have that application in front of me, no.
Are you applying for it?
No.
You're not applying for front yard parking permit?
I am not applying for a front yard parking permit.
Okay, and my next My next question is, I have real trouble with your third floor deck. I think for the very reasons that the adjacent neighbor has mentioned, it's a huge imposition, privacy imposition for the property next door. Putting a privacy screen in makes it even worse because, as you can see from the elevation drawing that is on the screen now, it adds, well, it effectively makes the wall that's, can we go back to the drawing? It effectively makes, yeah, there, thanks. It effectively makes the wall much higher. Would you consider removing that deck? Because I'm certainly not supportive of that deck at all. I think it's a huge problem.
Well, we do have a view of the lake from that deck, which that's part of the reasons why my client set that third floor back. But if it helps approve the application, maybe we could consider it to have less impact. But that was part of the reasons why we set that third floor back so much, is so that my clients could have a view of the lake from the third floor.
Appreciate it, but if it's got privacy screening, that view is going to be impacted. And I think, as the adjacent neighbor mentioned, it's a huge privacy problem for her. And I mean, I completely understand her concern.
What about if we were to provide opaque screening, like some sort of glass, frosted glass, where we could still have our deck and the sunlight could still project through? But as you can see from her photos, the impact of the sunlight already causes shadow effect from the sunlight because of the west-facing rear yards.
Yeah, that's a different issue, though, Leo. The lack of sunlight is one issue. Her point is that anybody on that deck is going to be able to basically see everything in her yard, and that's true. If you put privacy screening on, then you make this rather substantial block wall even bigger. I can't.
What about if we were to put privacy screening on the side and the rear?
I don't think.
And just have our view to the south.
I don't think that's.
This way we get everybody's happy, and we still can maintain our view without imposing on her privacy.
You would still be able to have the view by way of windows.
We have no windows on that side. Or, yes, ultimately, yes, we could.
The doorway to the balcony could become window.
Would you be open to a deferral to negotiate with?
No, unfortunately, my clients are very anxious to start construction.
Okay.
I think we've tried to talk to all the neighbors. We did make the efforts to knock on all the doors and discuss their concerns, and that's why we pushed the front balcony back in order to address some of the concerns.
Okay.
In addition, like I said, we could provide screening to the side, north side, and to the rear. This way, even through the door or window, we wouldn't be able to see the rear yard of our neighbor to the north.
Okay, I'm not sure we're going to get anywhere. You've sort of stated your position on that. The committee will consider it in its own wisdom. Any further questions? All right. So, Carl, do you have any further questions on that on that line?
No, I don't. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Leo.
And so we can now take the application into committee. And I think it's important that we probably begin with some conversation.
I'll start
Mr.
first.
Chang, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I think somehow when everything adds up together, it becomes a very intrusive design. And that's my first impression. And then I'm trying to see how to improve it, like what Carl suggested. but it seems like it is what it is. So it's pretty difficult for me to support it.
Aaron, would you want to see, is it this third floor balcony?
Yeah, I think the third floor balcony is one major thing, and I appreciate, recessing the front, which is a typical move for most buildings in Toronto, I would say, with a third story, because you want to maintain the shadow, not just the view, but privacy is more the shadow on the street. It's the rear part that is creating quite something to the neighbors.
Okay.
It's a little bit overbuilt over there. So just crossed the line considering as minor. So having a Juliet balcony without an actual stick-out balcony would definitely help. But I don't think the applicant is in agreement with that.
Well, yeah, but the committee can make up can use its wisdom on that. We're hearing from the neighbor who has concerns about it. And who would like to speak next? Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm similarly to Aaron. I'm not going to be able to support this application either. I think the implications of the application to the property number 28 are just unacceptable. I thought that the presentation by the owner, 28, was well thought out, and I know the area well. I can understand her concern, and I just don't think it's reasonable for this new development to impinge so negatively on her property. I think it's bad planning. So I also will not be supporting the application.
I understand. Thank you. Mr. Reid?
Sure. Thanks, Chair. No, I agree with my colleagues, but it's too bad. I think most of the project is good. I think the main issue from my perspective is this third floor balcony, and screening's not the solution, right? Because it's going to add just more visual bulk shadow. I'm just wondering how my colleagues would feel about just approving the application but not approving the third floor balcony, or if that's doable even from a technical perspective from staff's view.
That's what I was trying to
Okay,
explore.
well, I think the Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer is thinking about this.
Through the chair, you would be able to impose a condition of approval that would remove the third floor balcony.
We could do that.
Without changing the numbers of the variance.
But I'm not hearing that members are particularly inclined in that direction. So I would, from my own point of view, I would be ready to vote to refuse this application also because of the impacts that we've heard. So that is an outright refusal. So if there are no further comments, I think we can move to a motion. Yes. Mr. Nipfel, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to move to deny approval to this application based on its imposition on the adjacent neighbors. I think it's unreasonable and creates a substantial loss of privacy.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? It is seconded by Mr. Chang. It is therefore moved and seconded to refuse the application. Those in favor of that motion, please show of hands. Okay, those opposed, let the record show that Mr. Reid is in dissent, but the motion does carry. And with that, the application is refused. Thank you, panel. And we move on to number 16. And on number 16, 276 Gainsborough Road, panel has before it materials submitted, time of application, one photograph of a tree on the property. There's a staff report from Urban Forestry, and 6 form letters in support from these addresses on Gainsborough: 270, 272, 274, 280, 281, and 282. Let's have the agent join us, please.
It's Mike Gilliver. I'm here representing 276 Gainsborough Road, and I'm with Replacement Design, located at 911 Davenport Road. And just before we start, that forestry report, that wasn't appearing online. Is that just the usual condition for an application? Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Panel members, any questions for this agent? I'm not hearing any. There don't appear to be. Okay. Agent, anything in particular we should know about your application?
Just as you mentioned, we've collected 6 letters of support, most apparently from the neighbors on either side, including the attached neighbor at 274. Our lot's a little unique. There's a large right-of-way that goes through the majority of it to allow for parking in the neighbor's yard. So as it might look like we have parking in the back already, that isn't the case. So this garage will allow us to have that parking and needed storage space for the home itself. So open any questions you might have, but
very good.
That's just the general
Okay,
outline.
thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Nipfel has one. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible for the technician to put up the forestry report so that the applicant can see it?
Good idea.
Yes, a condition to that. Yeah, that was
Look
the
at the
standard
conditions,
condition
please.
for
Yeah.
submission.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. We're aware that we understand that's because of the large tree in the back corner that we're just slightly projecting into, so we're okay with that.
Okay. All right then. Mr. Nipfel,
I was going to move a motion.
go
Am I
for
out
it.
of line?
Yes, proceed.
Okay. I'd like to move approval of the application subject to forestry condition number 2. It's a minor application with really no negative impact on abutting owners, and it has the support of the neighbors on either side.
Very good. Is there a second? It is seconded. Mr. Reed. Those in favor? It is moved to approve. Those in favor, show of hands, please. Vote unanimous. Motion carries. Application approved, subject to forestry. Number 17 is 249 Westmount Avenue. And on this application, we have before us those plans submitted at time of application, and one piece of written correspondence in concern from 244 Westmount. So let's have the applicant join us by stating your name.
Sarah, you've been unmuted.
Can you hear me?
We do hear you.
Yeah, this is Sarah Maddy, and my address is 90 Brahamthorpe Road West in Mississauga.
Very good afternoon to you. Panel members, questions for the applicant? Don't appear to be any. Okay, is anyone ready with a motion? Sarah, is there anything about your application, sort of one important thing that we should know? We don't need a full presentation, but is there something we should know about your application?
For variance number 11, there has been some changes, some updates for the roof eaves.
Oh, there
So
are
we're-
changes that affect the variances?
Yeah, so we're proposing a projection of 0.11
Okay, so we do need to capture those at this, before we vote on this, we do need to capture those changes. So I'm going to backtrack here and ask you to identify to the panel any changes that you are making to the variances.
So the first one is number 8.
Yes?
Number 8 would be we're proposing a balcony area of 3.05 instead of 4.4 square meters.
3.05 replaces 4.4 meters square in variance
Right.
number 8. Thank you.
And number 11, the eave projection is 0.11 instead of 1.2 meters.
Okay, that's quite a
And then-
significant difference. Okay.
Yeah, and then we-
0.11
Correct.
on number
And then
11.
we have 0.13 from the property line instead of 0 meters.
I beg your pardon. Say that again, please.
So we have 0.13 meters from the property line instead of 0.0 meters.
Okay, so the zero becomes, that's, yes, the
Sorry.
zero that's we're highlighting.
1.3.
I'm sorry. So say again, that becomes 0.13?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good that we captured all those changes. All right. Panel, anyone ready with anyone thinking of a motion? We can take this one into committee now for discussion or a motion. Mr. Reed, please.
Thanks, Chair. There's a long list of variances here, but I think that this file is supportable. It will be longer than most of the houses on the block, but I think that the additional length that's being gained is the impact of that over what would be permitted as of right is not significant. Many of the variances are extremely minor or reflect existing conditions. So I think as a whole, it's supportable. I move approval of the application as amended with no conditions.
Thank you. Second? Mr. Chang. Moved and seconded to approve the amended application. All in favor, please. Show hands. That vote is unanimous. Motion carries. Application approved. The amended application is approved. Number 18 is 515 Pape Avenue. And on this application, we do have a deferral request. Is the applicant with us?
Oh,
Eric, you've been unmuted.
yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would like to request a deferral for this proposal so that we can have a chance to speak more with community planning and come up with some revisions to the proposal.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Nipfel, your question.
I was going to move approval, Madam.
Go ahead.
Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead.
This is appropriate. I'm glad you're consulting with planning, and if a deferral will assist with that consultation, I'm happy to move it.
Great.
Okay, second to that motion, Mr. Reed. Moved and seconded to defer. Those in favor, show of hands. Motion carries. Application is deferred. Number 19 is 125 Babby Point Road. Committee has before it Materials submitted time of application, plus revised materials. Site plans, floor plans, January 27. Cover letter from the agent, 12 April. Arborist report. And there is a staff report from Heritage Planning in Urban Design. Let's have the agent join us.
Hello, I am Judy Sunsela, the agent for 125 Baby Point Road.
Okay. Do you mind repeating your name, please?
Judy Sunsela.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Panel members, questions here for the agent?
No.
Not hearing any? No, don't appear to be any. Is anyone on the panel prepared to go forward with the motion? Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move approval of this application. I think it's relatively minor, and it certainly doesn't appear to present any negative implications for anyone near the property. I'm a bit confused by the heritage condition, but I gather it's a standard request, so my motion is subject to heritage.
Thank you. Second to that? Second to Mr. Cheng. Moved and seconded to approve, subject to heritage. All in favor, please. Show hands. Thank you. Unanimous vote, motion carries. Okay, we're now at number 20, which is the final application on this segment of our hearing. It relates to 218 Concord Avenue. The only materials before us are those submitted at the time of application, plus one piece of written correspondence opposing from 219 Concord. So let's have the agent join us, please.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, my name is Michael Scott. I'm the architect and the agent for the owners, and my address is 18 Linwood Avenue.
Very good, thank you. Moderator, do we have someone standing by here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a speaker on standby.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Scott, you have 5 minutes to present your application to the panel. Go ahead.
Sure. So this is a fairly modest proposal to add a partial third floor to a fairly small house. I would note that third floors on Concord Avenue are fairly common. About half the houses have them, and in the surrounding neighborhood. And that a second or third floor, or partial second or third floor with a walkout to the rear is a very common typology in the neighborhood. I think almost all of the immediately adjacent houses to the rear, to the south, and to the north have walkouts on either the second or third floor. We've designed the addition to minimize the alteration to the front of the building when it's viewed from the street to the greatest extent possible. The only thing you'll see is that the roof plane will extend up further than it does now. If you look at the front elevation drawing, you'll see that that's the only visible change. And in summary, it's designed to be as unobtrusive as possible from the street, and it's less than a 500-foot addition, and it'll add substantially to the utility of the house for the owners. We do have the letter of objection from Dr. Johnson, who lives across the street. And the first thing I'd like to note is that she seems to be under the impression that there's a rear addition proposed as well. And that's not part of the project. She must have misunderstood the drawings. There's no rear addition. The only alteration, there's some interior changes and the proposed partial third floor. I've already discussed how we've intended it to be as visually unobtrusive as possible from the street. And I think you will, in most occasions, not be able to see it at all from the street because of the trees which screen the roof of the building anyway. She was also concerned about tree protection. Of course, we'll follow all of urban forestry's requirements for protection of trees in both the front and rear yards.
Also, because it's solely a third floor addition, there will be no physical effects on the trees from the addition. There's no excavation proposed, and the trees do not have branches that extend over the roof, so we won't have to do any pruning. And of course, there's some concern for the occupant of the other attached house at 220 Concord as well. And we'll make every effort to engage with the owner there to minimize the effects of construction on her property. And we'll have to engage with her in any case over party wall permit applications. So there'll be some further discussion and negotiation there, but we'll do our very best. And so in summary, I think it's a fairly modest proposal, and I think it's in keeping with what has been done extensively elsewhere in the neighborhood and with other houses in the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, panel questions at this stage. Let's go ahead then and hear from the registered speaker.
Mary, you've been unmuted.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. We are the neighbors with the adjoining house to 218. So we're at 220 Concord Avenue.
Could you state your name,
we have
please?
a number. My name is Mary Kumantaris.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And we have a number of concerns, or a couple anyway. The look of the house, being that they're both semis, will not be uniform. You could tell that clearly from the drawings. And that's a concern for us. The proposal for a back balcony or terrace presents privacy issues. The houses both end at the same point, and so you'll be able to have direct access to our backyard and everyone in it and everything they're doing there. And the other issue that we have is a concern. It appears that the stairs that will be leading to the third floor that are going to be built will be built against the adjoining wall, and we fail to see how that will not lead to damages to the adjoining wall. So those are our primary concerns. We were contacted by the owner subsequent to our objection being registered. We do hope to hear from them some more. They did indicate their intentions with respect to the building of this addition. But we just wanted to note our concern to the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions for speaker? No. Okay. All right, then let's take those concerns back to the applicant, who will have a chance to speak in rebuttal.
Thank you. I think I've already spoken a little bit about the appearance of the two semi-detached houses from the front. I mean, we did try to minimize any changes. There'll be no changes to any of the existing fabric in the front. The extension to the roof line will be difficult to see from a lot of locations, certainly from the same side of the street and because of the trees that screen it. And I also don't think it's a disfiguring alteration. And finally, I would note that semi-detached houses where one owner has made changes which are not the same as the changes made by the other owner are perhaps more common than the opposite throughout the city of Toronto. Privacy is obviously a concern that everyone has whenever a third floor walkout is proposed, and we would certainly be open to a screening wall on the 220 side if that helps. I don't know, because there's no terrace on the back of 220, how much additional privacy that would provide. And as I say, I would also note that the properties to the south and to the north appear to have rear walkouts already. So looking down into backyards is kind of common in the area. And as for the structural damage concern related to the stairs going up, I can only note that we'll have the project designed by a structural engineer as well as by me, and take every care to avoid any damage to the neighboring property.
Thank you. Panel, at this stage, do you have any questions for the applicant? I am not hearing any, so we can take the application then into committee and move to a motion. Mr. Nipfel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a sensitive renovation. In response to the attached neighbor, I think it probably would be a good idea to put a 1.5 meter privacy screen between or on the north side of the proposed third story deck. I will notice that the architect in this case has gone to some lengths to make the balcony blend with the natural vegetation of the area and also to provide screening by putting a planter. He's using a planter instead of just a standard railing, and I applaud him for that. I think that's a very nice solution, and one with time, if the planter is properly maintained, will make the balcony an asset rather than a liability. I also agree with the architect that the changes to the front are sensitive. They're not, the two halves of the building are not the same, but I do think that they're compatible one with the other. So having said that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to move approval of the application, just subject to providing the privacy screen along the north edge of the third floor balcony. And I'd like to tie the approval to the third floor plan, which shows this planted screen, the planter as an edge to the balcony.
Okay, thank you. That is seconded by Mr. Reed. So it is moved and seconded to approve. Those in favor, please show of hands. That motion is carried by a unanimous vote, and the application is so approved. And that wraps up the first segment of our hearing, and we will now recess and return. So we will resume at 2:10. Until then, we are in recess. Thank you all.